wonderful dignitaries, guests, and attendees. It gives me great joy and immense pleasure in welcoming you all to the International Care Leavers Convention. I am Karishma and your host for today, along with the beautiful friend Mai from Uganda. Mai joined Uganda Care Leavers in 2016 as a project coordinator. Over the last 3 years, she has been working closely with caregivers across Uganda, providing direct support and communication. Welcome, Mai.
Hello, Karishma. Thank you for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Hope everyone is doing good and great in these trying times of COVID. On the behalf of the organizing committee members and the young caregivers who join me today, I feel to extend my warmest welcome to everyone here. As you all know, this conference was to be held in March first, the first kind of the event, but we were all so prepared, but then COVID stopped us. As you know, this conference was canceled, but caregivers are fighters. They continued to connect and slowly learned about the power of technology, how to use Zoom, internet platforms, and then they came together and listened to each other. And no matter how the distance was, they managed to connect and get together and continue to understand each other's problems and solve and stay together. Over the month of June to August, we made our own declaration, which have a session on this. We will have a session on this tomorrow. Have a session on the declaration tomorrow. Karishma will be saying more about that. And in September, we together with other organizations who are organizing, the organizing committee decided to hold a virtual, and here we are. We worked hard, not alone. We received support from supporters. We received support from all corners, caregivers, networks, technical partners, donors and experts, and everyone who contributed to make this day happen. And we are very thankful for this. This convention, as you know, aims to connect the lived experience of caregivers across. Now I request Karishma, please, if you can share more of what's going to happen in the next 3 days.
Yeah, thank you, Mai. Can we have the poll, please, Aviral?
So poll will be there on the platform. Waiting for it.
Sure. So let me take you through the events platform, the engagement options that we have for you over the 3 days. This platform is open and can be accessed for the next 30 days for everyone who has registered with us. We have a selfie corner where you can click and keep memories of this convention. On the events platform, we also have a resource center and exhibition hall. We have all the videos and posters on leaving care. We also offer you the opportunity to networking with other participants from over 68 countries in the networking lounge. And for any assistance, we have a help desk throughout the 3 days for any support you need from us. Do navigate the platform as and when you have time to enjoy the convention. Do view the recordings for our 4 pre-events that we organized between 23rd October to 21st November. Over to you, Mai.
Thank you, Karishma. Please allow me to invite Dr. Kilian Modi. the chairman of the organizing committee and the founder and managing trustee of Udai Care, to welcome and deliver her opening address. Please, Dr. Kilian Modi, thank you.
Thank you, Mai. Thank you, Karishma, for such a beautiful start. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, and a heartiest namaste from India. The distinguished speakers, moderators, participants, practitioners, policymakers, and most importantly, the care leavers, those with lived experience of care, who have joined us today on the first day of the 3 days, first ever International Care Leavers Convention. It's an honor for me to make this welcome address to you all on behalf of the organizing committee consisting of 4 organizations: Udayan Care India, SOS Children's Villages Asia, Kinder's Perspective Netherlands, and University of Hildesheim, Germany, and 4 care leavers networks: Clan India, GNG Sri Lanka, Zimbabwe Care Leavers Network, and the Latin America Care Leavers Network. This is a moment of joy for me. I'm not able to even express my joy. Our MCs, you have just seen, lovely Karishma and Mai, they have already explained the origin of the convention. Let me just reiterate by saying that we all know the reality of millions of children in care the world over, either in residential care or in foster care. Irrespective of the type of care that they receive, they always find themselves, when they attain adulthood, on the brink of society, unprepared for living care, standing alone, isolated, with, without the much needed continuum of support. You can imagine how much life becomes difficult without direction, guidance, and support, financial and otherwise. Over the last 1 year of our discussions with the care leavers globally, it was strongly felt that a platform needed to be created to deliberate with greater breadth and depth on living care policies and laws, on diverse experiences as experienced by youth coming out of alternative modes of care, the policies and current practices, and how these impact on their development and growth and mental health of such youth who already had to face huge effects of familial separation, loss, deprivation before coming into alternative care. Then what happens when they get into a alternative care setting, whether in foster care in an institution, ultimately at the age of 18 being set free, a term I have never been able to come to terms with. How do policymakers view the care living policies, processes, its agenda and execution, the practitioners' perspectives, as well as, most important, how do the care leavers themselves view it, analyze it, and want improvements? What can be done further? The recommendations to improve the quality of life of such youth so that they grow into wholesome individuals, resources to themselves, to the cause, and to the larger society. How can different countries, laws, practices, research on care leaving come together that some common agenda for future can be chalked out in engagement with care leavers? We have today, tomorrow, and day after, as it was in the 4 pre-events that preceded this convention. And ultimately, we are going to be having the grand finale on 11th of December. All this, we are very fortunate that we have the right range of expertise and experiences in this virtual room. I'm told participants from over 82 countries who would raise compelling questions related to the practices and policies of care leaving and its impact on mental health, care, and support. The experts would engage in exploring answers with this enlightened audience and challenge the assumptions which might be limiting to our own thinking. There are no easy and final answers, as we all know, but the dialogue in these 3 days are going to be charting out ultimately, hopefully, a course which will be addressed by policymakers and practitioners alike for a positive development and growth of youth coming out of this care leaving. Before I hand over the mic back to my young MCs, I need to thank all our organizing committee members, funders, technical partners, collaborators, sponsors, as well as our speakers, moderators, MCs, without whose partnership this convention would not have been possible. A word of thanks is also due to New Socia, our convention agency, for all their painstaking support. Once again, I, on behalf of Udayan Care and all the other 7 members of the organizing committee, heartily welcome you all and extend a big thank you for joining hands.
Thank you, Dr. Kiran, for your inspiring words. It is always very, very inspiring and wonderful to listen whenever you talk. So now we have Ms. Shubha Mursi, Professor Wolfgang, Ms. Martini, Ms. Nimu, Mr. Jeffrey to talk about why they came together to hold a convention of this kind. And I welcome you all. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Karishma. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. It's truly a virtual world with people participating from all across the globe. And that's such a wonderful thing to happen, and all possible because of the technological development. So thank you all the participants, researchers, academicians, policymakers who are all joining us today from different parts of the world. It's a reflection of the importance of this topic and its relevance that all of you, and earlier today we were told that more than 500 people were in the auditorium. And this is absolutely a reflection of the importance and the relevance of this topic. Care levers was relevant yesterday, it's relevant today, and we will have care levers tomorrow. So it's a topic which remains to be addressed and to be addressed in a big way. Here, I want to thank and congratulate essentially all the care levers who are taking a part and raising their voices. It makes me really happy when the care levers are taking it on themselves to bring forth their challenges, their issues that they face in this world. More such groups are needed to be created in different countries so that their voices can reach the decision makers. Dear care levers, you have a right to bring forth the issues you face. However, my request is do it respectfully with an intention to find solutions so we can find solutions together. We have a number of good practices from the different countries, and I believe this information must be shared more proactively. And this is something which is missing in my view. Here, I would like to share the story of Borai. I would have ideally liked to have some time to also share some videos. Nevertheless, the limited time, I just want to share the story of Borai, whom I met in Siem Reap. He underwent, he's a care leaver who received vocational training in one of the SOS Children's Village programs. And today he successfully employs younger brothers and sisters from the vocational training center after they finish their program and training by giving them employment. Such a wonderful success story where this young man today has grown to be an entrepreneur in his own right, employing other care levers who are trained and who can be brought mainstream. In the best of the times, care levers have different challenges to face and to reach their rightful place in the society. Now, due to the pandemic, these challenges have become even more complicated and complex, and the situation demands that we look at different ways too. And who best to tell us the different ways other than the young care levers themselves, who can bring across what they are capable of, and we can help them to reach there. There is no one best way. There are multiple roads that lead us to our destination. So we have to find this together. So, in my view, these ways cannot be generalized. They have to be identified and has to be designed based on the specific local conditions. For example, reskilling. We talk about reskilling. What does this mean? Reskilling probably in Germany or Australia would mean something very different from what it is in Cambodia or in India. So this has to be based on the specific country that we are looking at. To look at the formal sector, informal, entrepreneurship, what works, what are the means that are available. So in specific, we must make a demand to the decision makers for an affirmative action for the care levers. In many countries, the state is actually not providing much, and it gets even worse in less developed or developing countries where it is seen as someone else's responsibility to provide this to the care levers. So I believe it's very important to bring the state into the picture to be able to provide this. The COVID has created mental health issues in the society. It remains to be investigated as to what impact it has on the care levers as a group. It's a high stress situation for all of us. We face this, we face it at our homes. So imagine what happens to a youngster who is facing uncertainty during these times, whether it is their education or the job opportunity. What are they going to do with their life? So I think a strong possibility exists that due to lack of support, emotional and otherwise, the care levers probably or maybe are much more strongly impacted than what meets the eye. So in my view, support structures would be needed to address these. And as it has a direct impact, these support structures have a direct impact, not only on the care levers, but also on the economies and the future lives of people. Last but not least, my request from the forum is that we unite together to ensure that the voices of the care levers are reaching the decision-making bodies. I'm positive that together we would be able to achieve that. We owe this to our care levers for their future and to ensure that their future is secure. I want to say thank you to everyone who has been part of this endeavor, and let's keep going. I want to leave you with a positive thought, which I found actually this morning. I thought it was really good, and I must add this here, coming from Oscar Wilde. The secret of remaining young is never to have an emotion that is unbecoming. So let's move forward. Let's do this together. Thank you so much, everyone, for paying attention. And thank you for being here on this journey that we want to make to secure the future of our care levers. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you so much for the kind words. Hoping that everyone is learning and listening and getting something to take home. I hope what we hear today, we just not like hear this and leave it here. I hope we get 1 or 2 or 3 words and take it with us. I'm happy to begin the technical session for the International Caregivers Convention. This session is focused on trying to set the context of the convention. We hear young people with experience of care to share with us their challenges, as well as we see what this pandemic of COVID-19 has done to us. The moderator for this session is Mr. Patrick Wisdom. Mr. Patrick is representing FICE from Brazil today, and is also the founder of the NGO called Contaro Condes. Sorry, Mr. Wisdom, if my pronunciation about this is not right. Please keep time, and we hope to see you conclude this session in the next 40 minutes as we can begin the next session in time. To all participants, please drop your questions in the box which you can find at the other. Please, if you can add that the comment box. I repeat, please, your questions can go in the comment box. Thank you so much. Over to you, Mr. Reason.
Good morning from Brazil, very early here, early hours of the morning still, but a great privilege to be here. Maybe you can hear from my voice that originally I'm from the UK. However, it's a great privilege to join you from Brazil, which has been my home for the last 25 years. I would like to ask the care leavers, please, to open your cameras. This morning we have 5 different care leavers with us. We're so excited to be here to share the experiences. I know that all of those of you who are joining us are more interested to hear the care leavers than anyone else. So we have in reverse alphabetical order, we have Tasha from Australia, Tanya from Germany, Phong from Vietnam. I say good morning because that's where I am. Very hard for your brain to work out. I'm sure Phong, it must be evening with you. Fabienne from Austria, Österreich, and is Adham with us from Jordan? That would be wonderful as well. We're not entirely sure if he's online yet. If he's not here yet, please let me know if he comes in so we can hear from Adham as well. Okay, Fabienne, could you open your camera? Are you with us? So let's hand quick words to each one. There you go, Fabienne. Great. Okay, great that you can be with us as well this morning. As I say, I don't know if Adham's going to be with us. He was here for the practice session. He spoke to us from Jordan, which was a great privilege. Hopefully he'll be able to join us this morning as well. So let's continue in reverse alphabetical order. Tasha, could you say good morning to everybody? Let us know where you're from, what you're doing these days. Tasha, can you hear us?
Hi.
Okay, Tasha, unfortunately, maybe me.
Studying still, and I work in the disability.
Oh, there. Okay, we can hear you. We can see you driving along early evening in Australia. We can't hear you very well. Could you repeat what you said?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, can do now. Yeah.
Sorry. Hi everybody. I'm Tasha. I'm from Sydney, Australia. I'm a care leaver with 8 years of experience in foster care, and I'm now the carer to my younger sister. At the moment, I'm still studying, and I'm working in the disability health sector. I'm studying psychology at the moment.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tasha. Good evening, Australia. Hi, Tanya from Berlin, maybe in Germany. I know it's Germany. Is it Berlin?
It is Berlin.
Great,
yes.
Great.
Good morning. Good morning from Berlin. And yeah, also from me, I'm super excited to be here. And I kind of stumbled into this conference by just applying, and then the organizers kind of like caught me and were like, you have to speak. So now I'm here. I'm a care leaver with, do we talk in years? It's like 4.5 years of care experience. And I'm a social worker now, and I work with young people that were in my situation when I was younger. And I also do a master's program at the moment.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tanya. Thanks for being with us this morning. Berlin, Phong from Vietnam.
Hello, Patrick. Good afternoon from Vietnam, and hello, everyone. My name is Phong, and I am a caregiver from Vietnam. Currently, I'm working as the CEO of the URE organization in education setting, which is build the leadership skill for the kids and the students from diverse background. And our organization focus on deliver the English course for the orphan from the north to the south of Vietnam. And I'm happy to be here to share my experience on the global perspective during the COVID-19.
Thank you, Phong. Thank you very much. Fabienne, are you there? Grüß Gott. Where's Fabienne? There she is, from Österreich, Austria.
Hello, everybody. It's really a pleasure to be here and to be given the opportunity to talk today about the issues of care leavers. I'm me too. I'm a care leaver as well with a 2 years experience in foster care. And right now I'm living in Paris, France, and I'm enrolled in a master's program of culture and communication.
Thank you, Fabienne. Wonderful. I think that's the end of our introductions. Sadly, I don't think Adham's with us yet. As I say, if he comes online, we'll get him straight to you. So in the same order, Tasha, can you hear us? We decided we'd ask a question to each one of us. So Tasha, how could you answer it for us? In what ways has 2020 been a unique year for you?
For me, it's been a unique year in a sense that here in Australia, we've only started to really ease lockdowns recently between states, and obviously with international borders closed, it's been challenging for us people who like to think. It's challenging in a sense that obviously you can see that other young people in the same experience are struggling with situations like homelessness, which continues to grow and continues to be an issue for us care leavers with minimal support, minimal kind of knowledge of where to navigate next. As a foster carer as well, it's been an interesting time because obviously with schools closing and different, I guess, parts of the community being closed, it's obviously placed a lot of restriction and I guess for my younger sister who I foster care, and as well as that, obviously things such as mental health has kind of risen for, I guess, myself and for my younger sister as well. So I think all carers, I can speak on behalf of all carers here in Australia, it has been really challenging, and I guess accessing resources probably would be a really significant challenge for young people experiencing hardship during this time.
Thank you, Tasha. Same question to you, Tanya. How's this year been unique for you?
I mean, unique like for everybody, because I have never had an experience with a pandemic. That's very new for me. And as I said, when we were talking, like the pre-talk, in my opinion, or from my point of view, it has been like a magnifying glass for the problems that were already there. And like for care leavers, the time kind of stops but doesn't stop. I mean, they still turn 18, and as I have read from people like on the platform and also like in talks, like 18 is like that age where the pressure is on care leavers. And at the same time, schools are closed, like refugee care leavers cannot go to the schools where they learn German, and learning German is like bound to their refugee status. And there's so many intersections, and like what was said in the beginning with like mental health, there's a lot of insecurity on visiting rules. Like, how do you organize, like if you're a foster carer and you have care of like 8 young people, and usually the parents would come visit, and there's a lot of turmoil around Christmas at the moment, and social services, like a lot of people are in home office, things take significantly longer to reach and to process. I've waited with a young person in care for 4 months for their student, like BAföG, it's called in German, like the student finances to be granted. And everything takes longer, and it puts a strain on everyone. Carers are in and out of quarantine, and yeah, as I said in the beginning, there's like a lot of pressure on the young people and a lot of insecurity, and there's rules about like who to meet in the free time. And for care leavers, your peers are your family, and this kind of like the understanding of family and who you can meet or not, or and the rules that you break when you meet with your family of choice, like causes a lot of insecurity. And I'll make a point here, maybe we can squeeze in some of the statements when the others have talked.
Thank you, Tanya. Wonderful. Thank you for all your reflection. You've really thought that through, and thanks for bringing it to us such a clear way. Thank you. Phong, you're next. How's this year been for you?
Okay. Actually, this is unique for each of us, especially for the care leaver in Vietnam, because the original COVID virus from the China, and we are the nearby Chinas. And as you know, the care leavers in Vietnam are a diverse group and representing many different lifestyle and living situations. And is it the case that there is a lot of vulnerability within the care leaver community? And for example, relating to housing, employment, mental health, and challenges on or unstable family relationship. And care leavers in Vietnam are one of the most vulnerable population at the impact of COVID-19, while the risks are increasing and opportunity are limiting or being eliminated in some economic sector. So that's why witnessing a lot of care leaver in my network, they have a lot of trouble regarding to the topic that I already mentioned. So my heart just broken. But thanks to the government, we have some policy to support them through the pandemic. And currently, Vietnam is facing for the second wave of COVID-19, but we do have the experience to unite and to help each other. And this is the unit for my country. Thank you.
Thank you, Phong. Incredible to see, although from such diverse countries, and each experience so unique, but so many similarities as well. Fabienne, we'd like to ask the same question to yourself. How has this year been unique to yourself and the care leaver experience?
Yeah, I think it was a really intense time for everyone, but care leavers maybe even more because they face a lot of problems. A lot of people don't. I heard stories. I heard horrible stories from a lot of care leavers. I heard about care leavers who accumulated a lot of debt because they lost their job, because they had to move out or into another housing. And this is I was shocked. I was shocked when I heard a lot of these stories. And I mean, care leavers even do even face a lot of problems on the base, which is not normal. I mean, they do have lesser access to education, to financial support and everything, and this is just accumulating. So it's just the base is already there, and we just the COVID-19 is putting even more on this base, which is already existing. And yeah, I think some care leavers do quite well in this pandemic, but others don't, and they have they have to, for example, stop university courses because they do not have any money to buy food, to buy for their housing. So they just, well, in this case, what you're doing. So you try to take the last straw, which is maybe parents, maybe not, but even when it's parents, it's not a good idea. So they go back, or they live with friends on a couch and try to get over this time. Yeah.
Thank you, Fabienne. So let's move on to a few other concepts. Next question, maybe going back to Tasha again. Maybe you could talk a little bit about this, where you've got support from, what you feel has been most important to you during this year, what helped, what was relevant. Yeah, that would be great, Tasha. Could you?
Yeah, I guess based on the circumstances that we've had to experience here in Australia, obviously our lockdowns have been on both spectrums, so quite severe. And as I said before, they are slowly lifting and different things like that. I think the biggest support network that I found resourceful to myself was, I guess, where I was living. So obviously I live with my two sisters, my older sister, my younger sister, who we foster care. And I guess with the whole idea of isolation and being alone and quarantining and all these new terms that we're all kind of understanding, I guess we're kind of forced to kind of use the network that we do have. And I was quite fortunate, as I still worked right through the pandemic in the job that I was in. And I guess being able to bounce off different energies that I like around the people that I work with. And I guess like there's not much else you could have really done. I know sometimes I'd be driving home from work or just looking outside and the roads are just so empty. And I think it was just such a strange time for a lot of us. And I do worry, and I do have on my mind, I guess based on my own experiences and having lived in quite harsh experiences in my foster care experience, I do worry for the young children who are, I guess, in these situations of neglect, abuse, that, or like, you know, where the avenue was school, for example, like, because I know when I was in out of home care, I looked to school as my escape, and I looked at that to kind of my avenue to kind of feel like I could be myself. And I know for a lot of young people it would be the same, and being in that kind of experience where you look to that, and then schools being shut down and you being limited in who you can talk to and having face-to-face contact with different people, like that's obviously going to throw a huge spanner in the work, and it's so detrimental to young people who are trapped in those sort of situations with no support. And for someone like myself, I couldn't imagine going through this pandemic while in foster care, because I know that like I don't, my dad passed away, my mum, we didn't have contact with my mum, we didn't have much contact with direct family. And I think being in that situation, I'd feel extremely alone and extremely like I don't have any support. And I think it would be extremely like challenging for young people at the moment who are in out of home care, particularly in more vulnerable situations where there is neglect and abuse occurring within the home, which is so prevalent. And I guess even in a country like Australia, where I guess people look to say, oh, you know, it's such a wonderful place, there's still these catastrophic conditions happening like on the daily. And it's so hard for me to kind of think of how hard the experience could be for a lot of young people in out of home care.
Thank you, Tasha. So great that we could hear you. We could hear you really well this time. Absolutely clear. And you're right. I'm sure your country is wonderful. I'd love to know it one day. Tanya, for yourself, please feel free to answer as you want, but just an idea, support, what has maybe worked better, who's been there for you, what has worked during this year, where have you turned to?
I mean, I'm one of the older care leavers, and I think a lot of times in the past I had to rely on myself, because similar to Tasha, I have like no contact to my family of origin, And like I found, it sounds weird, but I found a stable point in work. Like as a social worker, like there's this, like, it's like systemrelevant, like these essential workers. So I'm not out of work. So in a funny way, I found strength in work and also in supporting the young people that I take care of now, and being persistent with like agencies and like state officials, and be like, okay, I'm calling for like persistence and friendliness. I think, like calling for the 20th time, hey, have you proceeded this request that we sent in 3 months ago, and can you please recheck? And I think that is a work that carers do. And on like for myself, I think the computer became my social life. And I'm also part of a queer community, and we're quite efficient with organizing family of choice. So we did Zoom parties and try to stay connected, which is, I'm privileged. I have a home, I have stable internet connection, I have a laptop, and a lot of my teenagers do not have these resources, and they're also not given to them, and they have to pay for everything themselves. So yeah, it's kind of a, it's going round and round for me, because I have like these two perspectives. And also I talk with my teenagers a lot about being in this situation of not having a family of origin to like fall back on. And like I'm also a therapist, so I do therapy work with my teenagers, and I also go to therapy, which is also a big, like, great privilege.
Thank you, Tanya. Thank you very much. Phong, same question to you. Please feel free to let us know what has worked during this year, what has been relevant to you, what support you've had, what you felt you needed.
Okay. For me, the most support is from the SOS Children Villages, and is from the staff and the educators. Because at the very start of the COVID-19 enter into my country, we received the informal information from the SOS Children Villages, how to live and how to support each other, especially for the Care Liver Network. We also create a Facebook page to connect each other, and using the social media platform to asking the one who in need and the one who are lacking of the money for the rental house. And beside that, the government also recognized the necessity of publishing a range of vaccines for caregivers to living through the COVID-19 period. And therefore, during the pandemic, the Vietnam government has been making a number of changes to the way it supports caregivers during this time, especially for SOS Children Villages, on the semi-independent caregivers and the caregivers. We have the policy to support in terms of financial, and we have enough money to pay for the rental house. And currently, according to the number that I have collected, we have the 215 semi-independent caregiver and 247 independent caregiver who are receiving the support from the SOS Children. And beside that, the most thing that I recognize and really appreciate is a lot of the positive social worker and SOS educator. They are working together with the living care personal advisor to ensure the young caregiver will be properly supported throughout this crisis and beyond. For example, in my case, I need to call for my educator to express myself, because keeping yourself isolated for a very long time, since the January to the April, it's not easy. And beside that, we are those who already suffered trauma early on in our life. So the support that to make us to stay in education and to cope with the next step in the pandemic is the very important. And for me, this is my experience so far from the care leaver in Vietnam.
Thank you, Phong. Such a variety, as we reflect on the different support, a variety of ways, some more institutional, some peer-to-peer, some now I enjoyed the word that Tanya said about routine, about work, about how that's something to bring some sanity to all of us in the middle of these difficulties. Fabienne, what can you tell us about? Are you there? Yes, you are there. Yes. Where's the camera? Great. Fabienne, could you let us know how's the support been to you this year?
Yeah, the camera is not working. I don't know why, but okay. Yeah, I think I'm really thankful that I had financial support in form of a student loan. And so these last months in the pandemic for me as a student, as a care leaver student, was quite stable, I would say. And I was incredibly happy that I could rely on my student loan. But yeah, I know that a lot of other care leavers don't have this guarantee. And also to make a point to Tanya, me as well, I was incredibly happy to have a therapist because I don't know, the time during the pandemic was kind of it was a kind of an up and down emotionally. It was a really weird time, I think. It was quite surreal. And okay, now I can start it. And yeah, I was just incredibly happy to have this therapist on my side and to talk with him about everything and to try to sort out this stuff. Yeah, also friends. I think friends and family, or for care leavers, of course, it's more or less friends who form the family. Is incredibly important because I think this is kind of important to have this idea to be we together, we're fighting together against this, and we're in this boat together, as we say in German. And this is really important, but the pandemic, I don't know about all of the measurements in other countries, but in France, of course, we had the total lockdown. We weren't allowed to go out only for like 1 hour alone. So it was a really harsh lockdown. And yeah, I had friends and here, but like you could really see how this is weighing really hard on everybody. And yeah, I think we just should, it's not over yet, and I think we just we have to try to stay together, even if it's via visio calls or everything, but just try to connect with the people who are important to you. Maybe sometimes it's hard to get into the flow of, okay, I need to stay in contact and everything, but we need to stick on this, because otherwise we're just all alone in our house of thoughts, and maybe we lose each other, we lose ourselves maybe.
Thanks, Fabienne. Don't turn your camera off. We love seeing you. There's some amazing technical people behind who are projecting the faces and making that all happen. So let's just, now we're coming to the last round of questions. We're going to have a very quick video from our colleague in Egypt at the end. But so Tasha, Tanya, Phong, and Fabienne, your last chance, okay, to speak. The time has flown past. We've just had in Brazil, the country where I live, we've just had the wonderful experience of being able to listen to 50 care leavers across Brazil in the 5 territories of Brazil, the first ever formal review to listen to the voices of care leavers. And one of the things we asked, obviously, absolutely necessary, is what needs to be done better? What needs to be done better? So I'd love you to finish now with some last thoughts, each one of you. But please let us know what needs to be done better. What do we need to see different to help all of the care leavers that are either have already left or that are going to leave in the next years. Tasha, could we start again with you? Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So I think a major theme for us here in Australia is, I guess, obviously even around the world, would be the idea of supports and being able to access even just the guidance and like support as young people entering into adulthood, particularly, I guess, when you're 18. I mean, you look at it like, would you, if you had your own child, would you kick them out at 18 and expect them to kind of just navigate their way around the, you know, the world, you know, into workplace, into living arrangements, into bills, all these big things that, you know, we face as young people entering into the world as young people with a care experience. And I think a big issue that we've been working towards a lot here in Australia is trying to extend the care age to 21. And I think the most challenging thing for us is trying to gauge the government and the policymakers and people within high roles to kind of consider these issues. And I guess, is it appropriate for them to be able to, I guess, walk away from their legal responsibility as people who are, I guess, like for myself, for example, I was parental responsibility of the minister, so the state, and I guess for their responsibility to make sure that we're all okay and we're all getting the right supports. But is it okay for them to kind of walk away from that during this pandemic and kind of leave us hanging there and kind of to dwell within our vulnerability? And I think the fact that they've kind of pushed young people aside a little bit, in a sense, to kind of work more towards other things, other issues, like, I guess, like budgets and economy and all these different things. It's quite hard as a young person to kind of comprehend how that's okay, especially with the statistics that have kind of proven from this pandemic in terms of mental health and, I guess, homelessness, particularly adoption, all these different issues that are risen for young people with a care experience. And I think what we need is more gauge and more support from policymakers to kind of give us that support that we need and not let us fall into this vulnerable situation and kind of end up in questionable situations. So I think more interaction with young people and kind of gauging that support where it's needed, I think, is really important. And just kind of moving forward, considering ways in which we can overcome these sort of situations in like a sense that perhaps maybe a pandemic might happen again. Like, we need to be prepared, and resources need to be put forward so that young people don't feel so alone, and they are prepared for something like this, in the case that they lose their job, in the case that education is detrimented, and I guess not feeling like you know what to do, because it's hard enough kind of navigating as a young person into adulthood, let alone all these different barriers that are put in place with the global pandemic and, you know, the isolation that comes with that. So I think policymakers and people who are within that kind of authoritative role, they need to kind of keep in mind that there are very vulnerable populations that exist, like care leavers, that do need their support and do need to be heard during these times.
Thank you, Tasha. Thank you very much. Very lucid, very poignant, very important points. Tanya, yourself, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit crazy to hear from so many different countries and so similar experiences. And I mean, I've been active in a care leaver organization in Berlin, and one of the claims that we have is this 25, the new 18, because what Tasha said, like, you cannot just kick young people out without a safety net at the age of 18 and expect them to function with all the baggage that they bring into the care system. And I would really love for policymakers to move away from the focus on functioning to like nourishing, and to not focus on the success stories, because in a way all the people that are speaking here are success stories. But when I look back, I see who was lost on the way, and I would love for kids to not be scared to have access to therapy because they're not bearable for the system anymore. And I mean, I don't know if you know that, but a lot of times kids are put into foster settings, and then they're diagnosed, and then they're put into a different system. And, you know, like the door goes round and round. And sometimes kids have this history of being like put into 10 different facilities because they're considered too difficult. And I would really love for policymakers to focus on those vulnerable kids, also on the successful kids, but to focus on the vulnerability of care leavers and make room for failure.
Thank you, Tanya. Nourishing, what a word. What an amazing word you brought us. Thank you for that, Tanya. Very, very powerful, your words. Thank you. Phong, how about yourself?
Okay, from my perspective, like we all know, it is not unusual for a young person to leave care at their 16 years of age. So whether to move on to independent living or to return to family or friends, around 40% caregiver at this age, and it is therefore essential that a pathway plans are developed in a timely manner, making sure that if young person is considering living care assisting, they will know what support is available to them and what their future options are, especially correct during the pandemic COVID-19. And from that point, they will have a plan to help them move on to independence successfully. And my recommendation is the local authority and the public sector must complete an assessment of needs for the young person living care and make sure that the pathway plans is in place with their 16th birthday. And at SOS Children, we do have the IDP, mean individual development plan for all the children during they receiving the care. And this make the effectively make the transition from care to living independently, looking at the area including like accommodation, education and training, and financial support, and support to develop relationship skills and access to support for health needs, including mental health. And as a matter of fact, during the COVID-19, on the orphans, and specifically for the caregiver, we do need a contingency plans for support if independent living breakdowns. And from that, the plan is essential for them to integrate back to the society.
Thank you, Phong. Thank you very much. Contingency plans,
so
important. Just so powerful to hear you all. And I, you know, it's so difficult for me not to comment and not speak. I'm sure all of us are wanting to speak on your word just saying, but so important that we realize the voices and those who have been left behind, as Tanya put it. Fabienne, final word from you, please.
Yeah, what I've seen is that especially during the pandemic, a lot of new laws were made, and the policymakers they just think about like all the people in the state, in the country, but not caregiver as a especially vulnerable part of the society. So they decide whatever they decide, but they just don't put caregivers into account. And we had some projects in Austria about caregiver dialogue, so where we as caregivers go into dialogue with the policymakers. And after this, we decided to found the Caregiver Association Austria. to fight for this. And I think it's really important, because what we think is we need to give care leavers access to contact with policymakers, because the policymakers need to be aware of all of this problem. And this is I think this is like the solution for this problem, because we cannot, what I like to say is being a care leaver, it's like why are others who are not living my life deciding for my life?
Yeah. Thank you, Fabienne. Maybe that one phrase sums it up, you know. So many people speaking over their lives and not living it. Guys, it's been an absolute honor. I think all of us are so impacted by your words. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the thought that you've put into these minutes that you've shared with us this morning. And yeah, it's been very, very impactful. So I'd like to hand the panel back, thanking Tasha, Tanya, Fong, and Fabienne, Adam, who participated, and we just have a quick 2 to 3 minute video now from Ibrahim in Egypt. Thank you.
أنا إبراهيم سلامة من مصر. طبعا كانت فترة صعبة قوي فترة الكورونا، وكنا كلنا قاعدين في البيت، ففكرنا ازاي ان احنا نقدر نساعد اخواتنا الصغيرين، بالذات ان انا كنت مكانهم في يوم من الايام. فاللي هو في حاجات ممكن مقدم الرعاية ما يقدرش يوصلها للطفل قوي، ممكن انا عشان انا كنت في مكانه في يوم من الايام اقدر اوصلها له. فبدأنا نركز مع الولاد على الخاطئ، يعني كل ولد على حدة، يعني كل ولد بالجزء الخاص بيه في عدة اسلوبه، او لو عنده مهارة معينة ازاي ننميها له، او ان احنا ازاي نشتغل عليها. ده كان الشغل مع كل فرد على حسب موهبته، على حسب التالنت اللي عنده. دي كانت حاجة. الحاجة التانية ان احنا كنا بنشتغل برضو بشكل عام على ان احنا نزرع حاجات قد تكون لسه ما كانتش موجودة عندهم قوي، عشان كان سنهم ما بين 10 سنين او 9 سنين، اللي هي زي مثلا فهمهم يعني ايه خصوصية، تفهمهم ازاي يتعاملوا مع الناس، حاجات اخلاقيات دي. وكان الجزء برضه الروحاني، عشان خاطر برضه الفترة كانت الكورونا كانت بدايتها في رمضان، وكان جزء فيه من العبادات وكده، فكنا بنطور عندهم زي حفظ القرآن والعبادات، وان ازاي ان نصحح عندهم مفاهيم غلط في الدين. دي كانت ناحية تانية. وكان في جزء تاني برضه اللي هو عن هويتهم، ان هم لو عايزين يتكلموا اكتر كان يبقى سهل ان هو يتكلم مع ولد او اخوه كبير اللي هو حاسس ان هو زيه عن مقدم الرعايه اكتر، فده سهل اكتر ان احنا نوصل له ده. يعني حاولنا نشتغل على اكتر من حاجه في فتره الكورونا. فالجزء الثقافي كنا شغالين اكتر فيه على مسابقات، وان احنا نعمل اسئله وفرق بحيث ان هي يبقى في نوع من المنافسه، وده خلاهم اكتر ان هم يتعاملوا مع بعض ويقربوا من بعض اكتر. ودي كانت اكتر حاجه مميزه في المسابقات، ان هم مش بس بيكتسبوا معلومات بس. وكان في جزء اللي هو بتاع المركز التكنولوجي، بحيث ان كانت الكورونا كانت مرتبطه بان بيتعمل سيشنات لايف وعلى زوم والحاجات دي، فقدرنا ان احنا نعلمهم في المركز التكنولوجي ازاي يقعدوا على الكمبيوتر ويتعاملوا على الميل، ويتعاملوا ازاي يبقوا لايف وياخدوا كورساتهم بشكل كويس ومباشر. لما الكورونا بدات برضو كده ما كانش فيه خروجات كتير، فبداوا الاولاد يفكروا في ان احنا نعمل ايه عشان خاطر ان احنا يبقى في كذا حاجه بنعملها وما يحسوش بالملل. فبداوا يفكروا ان احنا ازاي نوضب. كان عندنا روف فاضي خالص، فان هم ازاي يبداوا يوضبوا دوت ويطوروا ده. قدرنا في الروف ان احنا نعمل اكتر من نشاط. بدانا بزراعه اسطح، وبعد كده بدأنا نعمل بسين، ندهن الحيطة، نرسم عليها، نعمل حاجات كلها بتبقى هاند ميد، كلها من إطارات العربيات وإعادة تدوير، ترابيزات. فلحد ما بقى حاجة مهمة جدا. الولاد حتى اتبسطوا بالحاجة دي، وحسوا ان قد ايه المكان ده بتاعهم وهم اللي عاملينه، يعني مش حاجة جاهزة، هم ما جوش لقوا حاجة جاهزة. فده ساعدهم في أكتر من حاجة، ان هم ده مكانهم يحافظوا عليه، وان ده مكانهم اللي بعد كده هم اللي ازاي يفكروا هم يطوروا فيه. بس ودي كانت اهم حاجه، يعني دي اكتر حاجه اتبسطوا فيها.
Yeah, so I think it was wonderful, listening the voices of all the caregivers, and it was really insightful. And I'm sure that it was being loved by everyone present on the platform. And one of the main takeaways for me would be, this that somebody mentioned that it is very, very important to hear the voices, of the people who got lost in their journey. And at last, I would say it was extremely powerful to hear all these speakers and caregivers from different countries. I would like to thank all of you from bottom of my heart. Thanks a lot, Mr. Patrick and all the caregivers. And here again, I would like to invite Professor Wolfgang from the University of Hildesheim to talk about why, he together with other people came together for convention of this kind. A very warm welcome to Mr. Wolfgang.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. And it's a great pleasure to be here. And I think it was a really strong start of our convention. I think it was the right way around, that first the care leaver should speak, and we are here to listen and we want to listen. That's why we did this convention and we organized this together with all these wonderful people. We were working together on this way. Thank you to Kiran, Martin, Charuti, Lena, Severin, Doro, Caroline, and all the others who were working for these conventions, all the care leaver who worked for this, because we saw already it's so important to fight for the rights for the young people. And it's just the right moment to do the convention now, because it's a situation in the world that the rights of young people are not in the front line. And so we have to discuss about this. I want to be here, and we from Hildesheim, to listen to you all. And I think it's a beginning. We should go on, and this convention could be a starting point to do more for the rights of care leaver worldwide. And now I want to hand over to Martin. Hello, Martin.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, but good morning from Europe. 14 years ago, I was one of the leaders of the FISE youth camp in Sarajevo. It was one of the first FISE youth camps where children with care experience fully participated. We have had an awesome time with young people from India, South Africa, the Netherlands, Finland, and some countries from the former Yugoslavia. Like I mentioned, the event took place in Sarajevo. It's a city that was and still is recovering from the war in the 90s. It was the first time I actually heard about the problem of care leaving 14 years ago. During one of the workshops, one of the young participants from the Netherlands addressed the problem of care leaving to professionals from all over the world. Leaving planet youth care and arriving on planet Earth is an enormous challenge. The workshop was recorded on video that was quite progressive at that time, and see us now, and shared on an online platform like YouTube. Unfortunately, not a lot changed since that time. Therefore, it is very amazing to start the first International Care Leavers Convention today. It's a complete virtual conference with participants from more than 80 different countries. I'm often talking about the so-called snowball effect. I'm really sure we will get a massive snowball rolling the coming days. On behalf of Kinderperspectief, I wish all policymakers, professionals, researchers, but most important for me, the care leavers, 3 inspiring days and unforgettable days. Let's get this snowball rolling together. Today, a dream becomes reality, and don't forget the snowball, even when there's no snow in your country. I hand over to the care leavers.
Now, thank you, Ms. Martini. It was wonderful to hear you. Now I invite Ms. Nimu. Are you there? I invite Ms. Nimu to share her views on the same.
Hi, Good evening, good morning to all of you who are here. I'm Nimu from Sri Lanka, and I'm also the caregiver. I was in the care since 2002, 2018. So to be honest, that I was a very radical character. So because of that case, I was just transferred through Child Development Center. So I was in 3 children's homes. And I proudly say that I had a BSc journalism from the University of NLM, India. So I'm really proud to be here as a caregiver to represent the Generation Never Give Up Network, which is the first Asian caregivers network. So as a Generation Never Give Up Network in Sri Lanka, we have now registered 200 caregivers with us, working with us, and also we are very proudly say that we have so many achievements within these 3 years. In 2017, we have started with the SOS Children in Sri Lanka. Start this 18 plus campaign, and then we have started the Generation Never Give Up Network. So I am proud to say that we have 200 caregivers registered, and also we are able to push the Sri Lankan government for having some kind of changes in the birth certificate, which is the must should be there and which should not be there. And also we are part of the organizing committee of International Caregivers Convention 2020, and that was really a big opportunity for us as a caregiver, and also as a Generation Never Give Up Network. We are really just doing kind of activities in Sri Lanka altogether. When you all are talking about the COVID-19 situation, we as a team, we have 163 caregivers who is in the boarding house in Sri Lanka. So I'm really proud to say, as a GNG network, we did so many things, and I would like to ask you all who is here presenting here. Its time is going, so because of that, I just stop my voice. I just want to say who is here. Just think as caregivers, also the member of your family. Then you will able to understand what should you done. So at the last, not the least, I just want to say my favorite quotes for the caregivers who are presenting here. People will hurt you, hate you, and break you, but how strong you stand is what makes you. Over to you, Jeffrey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sister. It was wonderful listening to you. We are standing strongly with you. And I would like to invite Jeffrey. Mr. Jeffrey, are you there?
Hello, unfortunately Jeffrey is not here, but it's also Gift Live from Zimbabwe Caregivers Network. Hello.
Yeah, you're not that audible, Jeffrey. Your voice is breaking.
Hello.
Yeah, Jeffrey, we can hear.
Hello.
Yes, Jeffrey, you can talk.
Okay, yes. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure to be part of the International Caregivers Convention, first of its kind, and we also want to thank the organizing committee, again, SOS, the university in Germany, and all the different partners within the organizing committee for giving us an opportunity as caregivers in Zimbabwe and also in Africa to participate in this international convention. We just want to say we agree with a number of caregivers from different parts of the world, those in Asia, those in Australia, those in Europe. We have spoken about the different issues that caregivers are facing on a daily basis. And ourselves as Zimbabwe Caregivers Network, we are a group of young people and children who are still in alternative care, mostly foster care and residential childcare facilities. So far we have a database of more than 3,000 caregivers who we work with on different issues. And we have been progressing quite well, like Sri Lanka, our colleagues, we have managed to interact with policymakers. We have also done the same. We have managed to interact with different policymakers, and we are happy to report that we are in the middle of drafting an aftercare policy and also an aftercare legislation in our own country of Zimbabwe. So I think in brief, this is what we have managed to do, and we are super excited and happy to hear different issues that are also the same with what caregivers are facing, the COVID-19 pandemic that have disrupted different livelihoods that caregivers are having. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Jeffrey. And I'm very happy to move to the next session, which is moderated by Mr. Terry Dignan. Mr. Terry is the CEO of FISE, which stands for Empowering People in Care in Ireland, an organization that works for children and young people in care. Again, we will leave it to Mr. Terry to ensure timely closure of the session. As we are really tight on the program schedule, thank you, Mr. Terry, in advance for your cooperation. Over to you, Mr. Terry. A warm welcome to you.
Thank you, Karishma. Can everybody hear me? You can hear me? Okay. All right. Thank you, Karishma. Welcome, everybody. And welcome to, in particular, to our panelists for this session. My name is Terry Dignan. I am the CEO of EPIC, Empowering People in Care. And just briefly to explain my own organization, we are a national participation and advocacy organization based in Ireland. So our work is with children in care, young people in aftercare, and also young people with care experience. And we work to improve their care experience, improve their lives, both transitioning into adulthood and after that. And at the moment, I think it's important to say in relation to our next session that our organization is currently working on a proposal to the Irish government to review the aftercare system. And two key elements of that we're proposing is, one, that they review the age at which young people have to leave care. I think Professor Mike Steen said recently, talked about the compression of adulthood for young people in aftercare, young people leaving care, which I think is very, very pertinent. And also the extension of aftercare support to 26 years of age from currently 23 in Ireland. So there are two, I suppose, key issues we're reviewing and asking the Irish government to look at in relation to care leavers. But without more ado, this particular session is looking at the international commitment to youth with a particular focus on care leavers. And the speakers in this session will look at those commitments, look at how they have impacted care leavers, either positively, I presume, or negatively. And we will have time, I suppose, at the end to take some maybe short questions or to review the issues that have been raised. So we are quite tight on time. I think each of the speakers have 5 minutes. I will let you know in advance when you're coming up to the end of your time. And if you need extension, we've already asked one request for an extension of time. And with time, we can allow that. So without further ado, could I call on our first speaker, Ms. Amanda Bissix. Amanda is the Child Protection Regional Officer in the UNICEF Regional Office for South Asia. So Amanda, could I ask you to take the floor? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Terry. Thank you so much. I was going to share my screen, but I'm unable to do so. So I'm wondering if the host could share the screen for me for my presentation.
We will try to have that done.
Yeah. So firstly, I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me, and a huge congratulations to the organising team for this being the first international conference on care leavers. I think it's a great achievement, particularly given this circumstance with COVID. I would also like to say appreciation for the speakers who were just before me. It was really inspiring to hear from care leavers, and I've taken down quite a lot of notes that I can and would like to take forward when I'm in discussions with policymakers. So I see my presentation's not up, but I'm going to proceed because in the interest of time. So firstly, I would just like to...
You can share it now.
Yeah. So firstly, I would just like to say, let me just, I can share now. Thank you so much. So just wanted to remind everybody the context that we have, and that is that, we have the Convention on the Rights of the Child on our side when it comes to advocacy and discussions with policymakers and the international commitment. And all governments, except for two, Somalia and the US government, applies to all children in all circumstances. And the Committee on the Rights of the Child is very actively in this area. And even last year, they had a resolution on the promotion of protection of children's rights, including children in care settings, which really makes the case and promotes that children should be given the best standard of care if they're in alternative care settings, and that they should have access to services as well, both during their time in care and after their time in care. So I think it's important that work in our international commitments. I just wanted to also note that, we know that a lot of children in care settings don't have the best experiences, and that adverse long-term impact on children they become adults. It has health effects, mental health effects, as we've heard from colleagues. It has physical health effects, and it also affects children's long-term education and income prospects as they move forward in life. And we know all this, and there's a lot of data on this. By one or more of a serious adverse childhood experience. We call these ACE. This is the platform we use for measuring this. And we know from this data that about 15% of adults have experienced 4 or more adverse effects, and that these have a really long-term impact on health, engagement in crime, education, attainment, and overall well-being. And that 42% of these adults have insecure attachment. And we know that children who have gone through care situations, alternative care situations, have a higher vulnerability to adverse effects. And when we look at the situation, for example, in India, one of the hosts of this, this conference actually worked with UNICEF on a study. And we found that overall care leavers, as I'm sure it's no surprise to many of you, they don't receive the support that they need. 78% of care leavers didn't have health insurance, for example. 40% couldn't continue their schooling. And a third of them didn't feel confident to live independently. So it clearly shows that what we're doing to prepare children to transition to adulthood and independent living, in the case of India, for example, and many countries, is not working effectively. But what I'd like to just dwell on here is not the problem so much, but the solutions, because we do know there are solutions. For example, UNICEF in India has a really large program which covers nearly 500,000 children, which looks at improving alternative care so that children have a better experience whilst in alternative care, a more family-based care, but also that their transition out to independent living is made easier, and they're able to access services. So we can learn from this program, for example. Other solutions include effective collaboration and partnerships around various agencies. And I think that's what's fantastic about this platform, bringing together academic institutions, NGOs, multilaterals, and governments. And I think what's really important, and I'd like to focus on here just for a moment, is the network and voices of care leavers. What I heard today was incredibly informative and inspiring. And as you say, you know best the situation, you know what the policy recommendations are. And I think we need to hear your voices more. I think in the whole area of child rights and child protection, this is an underrepresented group of children and adults. We don't hear enough about the issue, and I hope that this platform today actually helps to mobilise around this. And of course, one of the strategies is to prevent institutionalisation of children in the first place, and really to strengthen family-based alternative care. And there's a lot of work going on in this area and a lot of learning that we can share between countries and between organisations, including many of the organisations that are represented here today. And we also need better data and information. We need to understand the situation of care leavers. What are your experiences? How does this compare across countries, so that we can use this data and information in our advocacy with governments, with policymakers, and have evidence-based informed policies, so that this group of children and young adults are not left behind when policy decisions are made. And as we've heard from the panel earlier, this often happens. This is a group that's overlooked. So voice, information, data and partnerships are crucial, I think, as solutions to moving forward. And I would just like to end by leaving you with a reflection from actually one of my UNICEF colleagues who was a care leaver himself and is now working in our communication section at the global level. And he said I'd like to live in a world where investments are made to ensure those from public care and other children that have experienced adversity can reconnect, build and heal free from shame and stigma. This would be socially just, fiscally prudent, and just plain easier and better for the whole of society. And that's the point I want to emphasize, is looking after all our children and helping you transition to adulthood is better for you, it's better for your communities, and it's better for society as a whole. So I think we need to join hands to do that. And I'm really looking forward to outcomes of this conference and how UNICEF can actually work in partnership with you to help you raise your voice and mobilise and advocate with the policymakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We did go a little over. I'm going to ask the speakers to try, if possible, and I will try as well to keep to time, but we'll hopefully make that time up to the end. So again, thank you, Amanda. Could I introduce Nancy McGuire? Nancy is Child and Youth Participation Manager with Lumos in the UK. Nancy, could I ask you to take the floor? Thank you. Good morning, how are you? Nancy, you're muted at the moment. Could you unmute?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Good morning.
Sorry about that. Hi, thank you very much for inviting me. And I was really disappointed not to make it in March, so it's great that we can all meet up in this format. And I think my presentation is really touching on something that Fabian said about care leavers need to be at the table with policymakers, and you know what you need, and we need to listen more. So I'm here today to talk to you about the UN Day of General Discussion, which will take place next September in Geneva. And Days of General Discussion happen every 2 years, and the Committee on the Rights of the Child meet every 2 years to really unpack one issue of child rights in detail. So this year it will be child rights and alternative care. And it really brings together policymakers at the global and national level, together with academics and NGOs and people with lived experience, to really talk about the issues impacting children in alternative care. We have a really strong emphasis on child and youth participation. So we already have child and youth advisory groups who are leading the discussion on what topics we should discuss on the day, and also how to make the day more engaging for children and young people. So here are just some of the topics that we'll be discussing on the day. So things like how can we prevent family separation, and how can we make the care system meet the needs of children better. And also care leaving will be a big emphasis on the day, and how we can support care leavers better. So how you can get involved. Like I said, we already have our child and youth advisors. But there are other ways you can get involved, lots of other ways. Firstly, you could come to our session tomorrow at 3:20, and it will be led by 4 of the members of the youth advisory group. so you can meet them and find out more about how you could get involved. And also, I'll put in the chat box the form, but next year we will be doing a big research project where we want to hear from as many children in care and care leavers as possible around the world. And we want to hear about your experience and what you think needs to change. So it hasn't started yet, but if you fill out the form with your email address, once that's ready, we'll let you know how you can get involved in that. And also the Committee on the Rights of the Child really want to hear directly from you. So you can make a submission directly to the committee. You can do it as an individual or as a group, as a network of care leavers. And you can do it in the format that you feel comfortable with. So you could make a written submission, or you could make a video, or write a poem. They're really keen to hear from you in the way that you want to speak to them. So what's the point? We don't want it to be just another conference, but what we want is it to be like a real engagement between global policymakers and people with lived experience of the care system. They really want to hear from you. They're really open to listening to what you have to say. And by engaging in the day of general discussion, you have the opportunity to really influence genuine change for children in care and care leavers around the world. So yeah, really exciting opportunity to get more involved. And we'd love to speak to you in our session tomorrow. And thank you very much for inviting me. It's been great.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Food for thought there, and look forward to that. That's fantastic, and under time as well. So we're making up time as we go. Can I next introduce Professor Emmanuel Gruper? Good morning, Professor Gruper. Professor Gruper is Professor of Child and Youth Care in the Alma Academic College in Israel. So can I hand over to you, Professor Gruper? Very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. And I'm here not only as a professor in the university, but also as the president of FISA International, that is really happy to support and to be part of this international important gathering. Thank you. Can you move to the second one, please? Or give me the possibility to do it by myself? Okay, so this international forum, I think, is so important, especially in these crucial moments of COVID-19 world pandemic. And we would like to congratulate Dr. Kiran Modi and Udayan Kher from India and all the organizing committee and the different organizations that help to do this important gathering. As president of FISA International, it is an organization that focuses on out-of-home care around the world, that I was happy to join and support this initiative, and also to extend to you our best greetings from Jerusalem in Israel. May we move to the second? Thank you. So the importance of support in the transition from care to independent living, this is something that was not in the focus of educators for many years. For many years, residential care educators were not so much concerned about supporting youth in the transition from care to independence. And since the beginning of the 21st century, this became a crucial issue and support systems started to be developed. Most important to me is really the creating a safety net for supporting care leavers in the level of housing support, job finding, vocational training, support, emotional support, social relationships, meaningful adults that can be really supportive to care leavers and a lot of advocating versus authorities in the different countries. And the principles that lie along these activities are that as grown-up people, caregivers have to be strongly involved in all these processes, not like in the care system where the educators are taking all the responsibility. Here on this phase, the caregivers themselves must be the leaders and must be very strongly involved. So that's why we are helping in developing caregivers associations in many countries. And FITSE was very much involved also in organizing an international convention of caregivers in Vienna in 2016. And now we are very happy that this is taking place here today. And I think it was magnificent to hear the caregivers on the first session.
Just 1 minute, Professor, thank you.
Okay, I'm coming to the end. Thank you. Let's move to the next one. So the effects of COVID-19 pandemic on caregivers. I think the pandemic has really aggravated the situation of caregivers in many aspects in different countries. Many caregivers were forced to lose their jobs. As a consequence, many couldn't pay for their housing and were thrown out to the streets. These economical challenges created stressful psychological situation, and all this makes support from authorities and NGOs much more crucial in these days.
Okay. Professor, can I ask you to finish, if you would, please? Thank you.
Yes, this is the last one. So this International Forum of Caregivers is therefore so important, and the discussion and knowledge sharing which would take place during this forum are crucial in these days in order to give caregivers all over the world new possibilities, ideas, and support for overcoming this pandemic crisis situation. Thank you very much, and have a very successful meeting.
Thank you very much, Professor Cooper Emmanuel. Thank you. I'm going to move straight on, if I could, to Mr. Dwarka Siran. Dwarka, I know you've asked for an additional minute, which I will include in this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Development and Generation Unlimited at UNICEF in India. Dwarka, can I hand over to you? Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Terry. It gives me a great pleasure to participate in this panel, and thank you for the organizing team for giving us this great opportunity as well. This is a great step towards collectivizing and nurturing a global community of youth who are able to share, learn, and co-develop best practices towards securing their rights, entitlements, and most importantly, independence. We need to listen to the young people, and they strongly say, nothing about us without us, and the previous sessions were so powerful in this context. In India, there are a large number of children and young people in institutional care. Most of them have faced multiple deprivations, especially with the COVID-19 situation, and are from vulnerable groups. For them, institutionalization was the first resort and not the last. Today, I'll be focusing on young people who are transitioning from childhood to adulthood, from school to work. What are the opportunities and alternatives they have, especially for the aftercare leavers? How do they transition into independent, well-adjusted, and contributing members of society? And how do we, as UNICEF and partners, support and facilitate their journey? Nearly 2 years ago, UNICEF made a huge promise to young people across the world, a brighter future for each of them by 2030. Driven by this mission, UNICEF came together with partners to establish the Generation Unlimited in 2018 at the UN General Assembly to ensure that every young person between the age of 10 to 24 years were in age-appropriate learning, training, and employment by 2030. In India, it was launched as YUVA, a name that was chosen by the young people themselves. It's a national alliance that seeks to partner with various stakeholders, including government, private sector, civil society organizations, innovators, UN agencies, World Bank, and especially with young people to co-create holistic solutions for their enhanced and seamless transitions from learning to leadership and socioeconomic empowerment. It represents a step change in education, skilling, and employment for hundreds of millions of young people across the world. Yuva is committed to consolidating and mainstreaming the diverse and intersectional narratives, voices, and participation of all young people across multi-sectoral platforms, policies, and programs, and especially today with the care levers themselves. I would like to now talk a little bit about the objectives of Generation Unlimited and how we are looking at it. In the initial conceptualization of UI in itself, young people involved in living in institutional care and aftercare leavers were part of the Sorry, could I please ask the others to mute themselves?
That's good. We just have interference. Could whoever is speaking please mute?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And no problem. And so we have involved the care levers in that consultation itself. They spoke of their dreams and aspirations, their concerns and worries for the future, and solutions that they'd like to see that could help them. As we move forward in the operationalization of Yuva, we're ensuring that young people are the guiding force, and we have a young person in the advisory board who's an aftercare leaver. We need everyone on board to gather the evidence and data and build programs and platforms to ensure that all young people, including the caregivers, get their platforms. We have made bold commitments to young people. In India, we are looking at 100 million young women and men to have access to job matching and entrepreneurship opportunities together with private sector. For 200 million people to have skills for productive life and future of work. And for 300 million young people to partner with them as agents of change and leaders. Some initiatives we have begun, and we are in conversations with partners to take it forward, is in terms of, especially for children in institutional care and aftercare leavers, one is the career guidance portal and YouTube career classes that have reached over more than 60 million young people. And we are working with partners to ensure that operationalization of job matching platforms are available for them as well. Additionally, we have looked at a learning management system that helps in the self-paced learning for young people. And we have also signed partnerships with youth networks and government to ensure that young people have access to skills, learning, employment, and leadership opportunities. It's in partnership with Yuva, but more importantly with young care levers, that we'll be launching the National Care Levers Network and Strategy in early December. In fact, we have only just concluded our national level meeting, and some of the young care levers are here with us today and have contributed to the key demands and priorities that will be shared during this event. There's strength in unity, and care levers networks are a step in the right direction. And as a collective, the group can consolidate, identify the constituency, and derive support from each other, share information, and advocate for a systematic lacuna to be fulfilled. A final message to the young people listening in. Yuva and Generation Unlimited belongs to you, just as the future of this world belongs to you. So help us think big, be bold to build and lead their own agendas and thrive. Your generation can be the one that changes the course of the world, that sparks innovation and socioeconomic growth and creating the future. The partners who have collaborated with us, ranging from government, private sector, civil society organizations, are standing with you to invest in your ideas and solutions to support. It's your time, speak up, and don't give up until you're heard. I would like to now play a small video that shows the sense and spirit of Yuva. Sorry, I'm ending it now, and I would like to request for this video to play now. Thank you so much.
There are 333 million young people in India.
That's 28% of the population.
But 100% of the future. We are the largest number of young people in the world.
Every month, 1 million young people turn 18
and start looking for employment. Too many of us, especially women, are not in education, employment, or training.
We are creative
and innovative. We want to make our own way, but we need your support. Investing in young people will unleash our potential
and transform India.
Our generation
has the solutions.
They are local and global.
They're innovative and they work.
We have the solutions and you have the power.
The expertise.
The resources.
So let's co-create, refine,
scale up.
If we do this, we can surge ahead at an unmatchable pace.
We need more quality education and flexible learning.
We want employment opportunities. We want to be entrepreneurs.
With the skills to create our own future.
From our parents, we don't want pressure.
We live in a country where women have broken many ceilings.
We want to break more.
In the city
And the village.
we want skills that prepare us for the economy of the future. Our generation
It's 28% of the population.
but 100% of the future.
Our turn,
Our time.
our future. Join us. Join us.
Join us. We're unstoppable
Undivided.
You are
Generation Unlimited.
in India.
Thanks so much, Terry. That's all from my side.
Thank you, Dwarka. To try and stay in time, I'm going to move on quickly to Mr. Douglas Roygan, the Program Management Officer, Specialist Youth and Children, Human Rights and Social Inclusion on Habitat. So Douglas, could I pass on to you, please? Thank you. Do we have Douglas? Douglas, are you with us?
Unmute. Yep, sorry about that. I am.
Douglas,
apologies.
good morning. Hello.
Okay, I will be quick. Hi, I'm from Doug Reagan. I'm from UN Habitat, and thank you so much. This has been quite an inspiring meeting. I was especially impressed with the young people who are leaving care, and this is basically what I want to talk about quickly. I want to just talk about a program and a principle that we follow in UN Habitat that I think is a critical to young people, and is recognizing their leadership. We have principles of youth-led development, where youth define their own development goals. They have a safe, generous space. They adult and peer-to-peer mentorship, and they act as role models for other young people. These are principles that go throughout our programs, but we also have them, and we've also taken and support them in other programs. One of that is the Federation of BC Youth and Care Networks. It's in Canada. It's a nonprofit organization that is youth-led and youth-driven. And again, it's young people who are in care and who are leaving care. It's what we're really pushing is, and what we're really promoting and advancing is young people leading, not solely on their own. And they also work with adults when need to, but we really need to hear young people's voices, as we've heard today. And just in Canada, for example, young people transitioning out of government care, 55% of them are Indigenous young people, 40% of them are homeless after leaving care, and more than 2/3 won't get a high school diploma, and so on. I mean, many of these negative things, but what we find is that when they're coming together, and when they've come together to develop this organization, they've developed a whole range of programs that, again, are youth-led. They engage young people, are peer-to-peer. So we have the Dream Fund, which is funding specific projects and programs that young people themselves have. They have youth retreats. They provide one-to-one peer support. They have Power Pages, which represent some of the work they do. And they also have holiday care kits, which they're providing now during Christmas time, especially during COVID. I recognize that we're very late, so I'll just leave it there. But what we as an agency over the last 20 years and in funding over 500 youth-led organizations around the world is that we find that we really need to put the locus of change in young people, and especially those young people who are leaving care, who may sometimes seem to feel abandoned and need the support. We need to begin to invest in them directly. We need to make sure that they have the support to be able to create their own future and the future of their communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Douglas, and thank you for keeping it to time. Very interesting again. And then in the interest of time, can I finally hand over to Ms. Susana Puerto, Senior Youth Employment Specialist, Employment Policy Department, the International Labour Organization. Thank you, Susana.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. And as Doug said, I was very impressed and delighted to hear about the work that many of your organizations have done and the voices of young people in this conference. Thank you so much for the invitation, and I appreciate particularly the invitation by SOS Children's Village, our partner, in bringing us into this discussion. My focus clearly will be on youth employment, and I would like to first, So I would like to first start by talking about our work on youth employment in the UN system is guided by a commitment that was set back in 2015 under the Global Initiative on Decent Jobs for Youth. This is a multi-stakeholder alliance of different types of organizations, including UNICEF and UN Habitat, SOS Children's Village, and other partners from governance, private sector, NGOs, youth and youth organizations, and academia. Many of these actors working strongly at country level, particularly in supporting the transitions and the opportunity of young people in acquiring skills as well as opportunities in the labor market. So with this in mind, I just want to leave you with the message of our motto is very much to scale up action and impact on youth employment through effective, innovative, and evidence-based interventions. And we invite you to visit our work, our knowledge facility that contains a lot of information about what works in youth employment. And having said that, I would quickly like to jump into COVID-19 and youth employment and the situation of care leavers. As has been said before, and as we heard from young people, COVID-19 has pushed young people into very difficult situations, and particularly as regards as labor market outcomes. We identified three intervention channels or means by which young people have been affected: disruptions in education and training, increased difficulties for young job seekers to transition into decent jobs, and last but not least, the loss of jobs and income among young workers. Naturally, when we speak about vulnerable groups of young people, when we speak about young people in rural areas, young people with disabilities, or even young people that are in the process of leaving care or have left care, these vulnerabilities intensify with the pandemic. So many of these young people have face increased difficulties in transitioning to the labor market. Before COVID, we had about 267 million young people not in education, employment, or training, and we can expect that number will increase rapidly as we update labor force surveys and we come up with the new estimates, which will come up in January of next year. So let me just focus very much on some of the solutions that we are proposing through Decent Jobs for Youth. So first, let me focus on supporting enterprises, jobs, and incomes of young people. Solutions such as youth guarantees that can propose different pathways for young people leaving care and young people in disadvantaged situations are important, because these are opportunities or interventions that can bring young people back into education or offer quality apprenticeships or subsidized employment. So making sure.
Just 1 minute.
Thanks, Terry. Yes, thanks, Terry. So making sure that these opportunities for young people are promoted and provided is very important. Let me highlight that particularly for the role of care leavers, public employment services play a crucial role. And as you and other organizations review statutory policies and laws to support care leavers, it is important to make sure that we think about young people in the continuum, and we link these solutions, specific solutions for care leavers, to institutions that are in the labor markets, in the world of work. So public employment services that provide coaching, that provide support in the transition into employment will be critical to support young care leavers. And someone already mentioned entrepreneurship. So this is important because many young people in care or that have left care, they are lacking networks and they are lacking savings, different types of capital. So interventions to support and policies to support young people, providing an enabling environment for them to succeed in business is important. There are a whole set of policies that you can see in this slide. So let me just focus on a second set of policies to protect young workers. And particularly, you have mentioned before the importance of psychosocial support measures. One of the impacts of COVID-19 on young people is the deterioration of their psychosocial outcomes, and investing in support measures in sports and other type of activities is very crucial to address these situations among young people in general, but also among young workers. The promotion of youth rights goes to the core of ILO's work, and I want to invite you to also open a space into understanding what are the labor rights of young people, because as some of the young people that are in the panel that have left care are aware about your human rights. Labor rights are at the core of those human rights, and understanding what are those rights, promoting and advocating for those rights will be critical to make sure that the transition into decent work is not only a dream, but it becomes a reality for all. With that, I just want to say thank you, Terry, for the moderation and for rushing us through the session, and thank you very much, everyone, for listening. I look forward to the following discussions.
Thank you, Susanna. Thank you all. I am sorry that I felt like I was rushing you, but time was tight on all. I think some fantastic ideas, some fantastic initiatives. It's very inspiring to see the work that's going on internationally for care leavers across the board. And I think a lot more work to do. I hope a lot more investment from governments, particularly to support this work. But thank you all again for your inspiring words. And with that, can I pass back to the MCs? Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Mr. Telly, and to all your speakers for keeping time, and also for such a promising session for people or the young adults with care experience. Please, just a small reminder, if you have a question, drop it in the question box, and also if you have a comment or a suggestion, just also drop it in a comment chat box. We have some exciting news. We have brought you a super interesting booklet prepared by the JCare, documenting 10 case studies for caregivers from India. This booklet looks super interesting, and we will launch it now. Bilal, can we launch this booklet now? Thank you. Thank you. The booklet can also be viewed in on the resource center of the InVET platform. Please just check it out there, and also a link has been dropped in your chat box. Yes, we are super happy to have no other than Professor Mike Stein with us to release the booklet and also talk about why he chose to share this forward in this booklet, and explain to us his framework of working with young people living here. Professor Stein needs no introduction. He is from the Department of Social Policy and Social Work at the University of York, a founder member of International Research Network on transition to adulthood from care. He has written several books and research papers on living care, and is one of the biggest advocates on living care. Please, Professor Stein, we are very happy to have you here. Professor? Do we have a professor? Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Professor. Yes, we can hear you now.
My picture camera doesn't seem to be working. I don't know why. Oh, hold on. Okay. Can you see me now? No.
Not yet, Professor. The technical team, is there a way you can help Professor with his camera?
Seem to have a problem with the picture. I don't know why.
Sorry to interrupt, Mike. I think he just needs to hit on this button next to the mic, which says start video.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be, for some reason, it's not working. I don't know why.
It's most probably the Zoom settings at your back end, but I think we can continue as of now. We are able to hear you.
No, shall I just speak?
Yes, Professor. Let's continue.
I don't know why the video, I don't know why the camera isn't working. Hold on, start my video. No. No, I'm sorry about that. I don't know why it's not. No. Right, I won't waste any time. I will. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we hear you perfectly, Professor.
Okay. Yes. Okay, I'll speak. Sorry about that, and then see if I can fix it before we do the other session. Okay, yeah. No.
Professor, perhaps you can start speaking. It's okay.
Professor, are you there?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you, Professor. I think we'll just share a photo. You just share a photo of you with us later. But
hold on,
now...
I think we might.
Oh, okay. Go on.
Hello? Right.
Hello.
Sorry about the intervention again. I request for Ms. Mai to go ahead with Professor. And if anybody wants to see Professor, they can go on the platform and he has his picture there and there is introduction about him. So if anybody is interested, they can go on the convention platform and have a look.
Hello?
I would request, yeah, perfect, nice.
Oh, it connected for a second, Professor.
Connected, yeah, okay. So is sound going as well? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Hello?
Professor, we hear you and we see you, so please continue.
Okay, well, thank you very much for inviting me just to introduce the case studies. I'll only be quick. I'll talk for about 5 minutes. I think this is an important booklet, and it describes 3 different groups of young people. Those who successfully moved on from care, often making similar progress to young people in the general population. A second group of young people who is a much larger group, who we call survivors. Young people who make progress, but often it takes longer given their more difficult circumstances. And a third group of young people who were referred to traditionally as strugglers. They often go backwards on leaving care when they've moved out and have a cluster of poor life chances. It's probably important to say that these are not set groups. Young people move between these groups over time, or when their circumstances, experiences, or particularly the support they receive changes. What we do know from international research is that young people who do well from care have a number of experiences that are very important to their lives. First of all, they've experienced stable placements, providing good quality care and attachments, which promote their well-being, mental health, their emerging adulthood, and very importantly, their sense of agency, so they can participate to the maximum in their lives. Secondly, they've experienced they made educational progress. There's a lot of research that shows that lays the foundations for post-16 education, training, and finding satisfying employment. Also, doing well at school is associated with them having new opportunities, friends, leisure activities, and if you like, it helps them make a normative leap from a care identity to a common identity. So all those advantages from school go beyond education. Education itself is very important. They've also had all-round preparation in practical self-care, emotional and interpersonal skills. And that's very important because, again, it maximizes their agency they're able to exercise on leaving care and how they're able to participate. And there are many organizations now globally that show the success of young people participating in their lives. And indeed, this conference is an example of that. They've also experienced, to do well, global. They've also experienced gradual transitions from care, often leaving care later, which reflects more normative experiences, same as the young people in the general population. So helping young people to leave gradually and to reflect the transitions of other young people is very important. Leaving early, just 14, 15 or 16, which many young people do, unfortunately, that's very much at odds with normative, cultural and neurobiological development, is what we know about brain development these days. They also do well if they've had both formal and informal services, positive family friendship networks on their pathways to adulthood. And the formal services often include assistance with accommodation, financial assistance, help with education, careers, and health and well-being. Services are very important, particularly for specific groups of young people. Young parents from care, disabled young people with mental health problems, Black and minority young people, refugees, lesbian, bisexual, gay, transgendered, questioning young people. It's shown from the research evidence that these focus services are very important, arising out of a strong framework of services. So those 7 or 8 factors all contribute to young people doing well. And if you look at that as a resilience continuum, we see that the different groups fall somewhere on that continuum. Most young people who've had most of those experiences fall into the moving on group successfully. Those that have had mixed experiences fall into the middle group of survivors. And those young people who've had multiple risk factors, who have had great instability in care, missed out on school, not had good preparation, left care very early, and had very poor support, they're likely to fall into the final group, the strugglers group. And that is shown very clearly in the booklet that UDM Care has produced today. So I hope that booklet will be widely read and shared and discussed. I'll just return to my final point because it's an optimistic one. Those groups aren't set groups. They change over time. So if young people do have good quality relationships with mentors, carers after they leave care, they can do very well. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor, for your insight for the booklet. And I have a quick announcement to make. We are running 15 minutes late. So I request Professor to please stay with us because we have another session with you. And now is the time for the keynote address. We have Mark Riddle with us. We are happy to share that he is one of us. He is a care leaver. He left local authority care in 1984 in UK and spent years working with a range of organizations to campaign for care leaver support for care leavers. And also before training as a social worker in 2017, he received an MBE in the Queen's New Year Honours List for his outstanding contribution to children in care and care leavers. He is the National Implementation Advisor for the care leavers within the Department of Education in the Government of UK. He has written a book called The Conflict Kid, which talks about his time in the care system and subsequent travels around the world, including a chance casting in one of the Sylvester Stallone's Rambo movies. Over to you, Mark.
Yeah, thank you very much for that very kind introduction. I hope you can hear me okay. It's an absolute pleasure to talk, obviously, today at an international conference. And, you know, I've been asked to give you a bit of an inspirational speech today, which I'll try and do my best. But in doing that, you know, I have to tell you something about myself. So here's my story. Yes, I grew up in a unique position in the UK. My parents were multimillionaires. I gained 2 degrees from Manchester University and 1 from Oxford. I qualified as a social worker. Okay, yes, I have been an actor. I was in Rambo 3 with Sylvester Stallone. I am married and I've got 2 kids and a lovely granddaughter. I got the first outstanding for care leavers in the country, which is, you know, done by our regulators a couple of years ago. I have written a book. I am the author of a book, The Conflict Kid, and it's available on Amazon if people would like to buy it. And I did get an MBE from the Queen in the Queen's Honours List, and now I'm the National Advisor in government. And all of that is absolutely true. But there is another side to my story. Yes, I did grow up in local authority care. After watching the slow death of my mother at the hands of my father, which was tough as a child to watch. I lived with family, but it didn't work, and I was passed around as nobody really wanted me. I entered care and stayed there till I was 16. Didn't want to go into foster care, which is sort of a route for care for our young people today. But I didn't want another family because I already had one that was a little bit crazy anyway. And I decided to live in kids' homes. So I lived in kids' homes, big 15-unit bedded homes, with a real mixture of kids of all different ages. But in those days, and it shows some way of where we've moved, but we've still got a long way to go. In the early days, and I've known Mike. Mike was on the previous session. I've known Mike for a number of years, and Mike will remember the 7 or 8 things that I'll talk about now, certainly in the UK care system, is that in my time in care, there were closed reviews, so decisions were made about you outside of you being having a voice. We got bus tokens instead of real money to get on buses. We had an order book for clothes, which meant that you went to specific shops to buy clothes, and you couldn't really buy anything that was fashionable. There were different coloured dinner tickets. If you went to school and you got free dinners, your ticket, because you're a care leaver or a young person in care, it was a different colour. You left care at 16, and in those days, there was very little leaving care services. There was no specialist support with housing or with benefits in those days. And something that we've coined in the UK, and we call it corporate parents, is that we think the government and local authorities and agencies who bring children into care are really your corporate parents. So we should be your mum and dad. And you were moved around with stuff in black bags. And nowadays I put rubbish into black bags, and children in care and care leavers' clothes should go into decent bags and not bin bags. And there was no independence program. And I think in the last kids' home that I lived in, I had a difficult time and did some damage in the home. This was environmental stuff that I got involved in, and which was more likely to mean that I was going to be moved on from another placement. And the officer in charge at the time noticed that I'd packed all my stuff into black bags. I walked into the office and he asked me, he said, what's in the black bags? And I said, well, obviously I've done something wrong, so it's my time to move on from this home, which was not really nice, thinking that you're gonna have to move on again and again. And he said, no, you're not moving. He says, because this is your home. And I suppose I was 15 at the time, and I think that really changed my life in some ways to get me to where I am today. So I started to get involved. I used my voice, and I got involved in community organizations, got involved with the local authority, and we began to push for the system to improve. And that was in 1983. So it shows you how long I've been around in the system. And in those days, when you left care, at 16, it wasn't easy, and it's not easy today when young people start to move towards transitioning from care to independence. And I was on supplementary benefit in those days, which was a benefit allowance that you get, which is £29.50. Nowadays it's £59.80, which is still not an awful lot of money. But I took a lot out of my care experience, and the qualities that I took from my care experience are the stuff that I've taken into the job that I've got and every other job that I've done as a social worker. And a couple of those things are empathy. I had a good understanding of what it's like to have a care experience and to go through it. I was a bit of a leader. I took on some leadership qualities. I was able to resolve conflict fairly easily because I knew what conflict looked like when I lived at home and when I was talking to young people coming through the system. I could negotiate better things to happen. So we moved away from buying stuff on the order book to buying stuff in more fashionable shops. And I was resilient. When things came along, people used to say, God, you're so resilient about how you do stuff. Why is that? Well, it's because I grew up in local authority care. So that was just a couple of things that I've taken away from obviously experience. And one key thing that I've always done, and that's to tell my story. We have to tell stories, and I chose to do that. And it's not for everybody. Not everybody chooses to do that. But I chose to share the rest of my life with young people and professionals. And I do so because of a chance meeting with Sylvester Stallone many years ago. on the set of Rambo 3, probably around about 1987. And at the time I was traveling through Europe. I was in Israel, in the seaside town of Eilat. And I met a guy who said he was a casting agent, and I wasn't sure what a casting agent was. And he said his job was to find actors, to find people to work on films. And he asked if I'd be interested in being an extra on Rambo 3. Now, at that point, I thought he was probably, I think he probably maybe had too many pints to drink, and maybe thought he wasn't that genuine, but he was. And I ended up in the Sinai Desert the following morning at 5 o'clock. I thought I'd been sold to some Bedouin or someone in the desert for a couple of camels, but rightly so. I was on my way to the set of Rambo 3. I dressed up as a Russian commando Spetsnaz soldier. I was given an AK-47 submachine gun. And my job was then to sort of basically stand in a line of people and to try and see if I got picked by Sylvester Stallone and the director, Alec McDonald. And Sylvester Stallone turned up about 10 minutes later. He jumped out of a Hummer with his director and his assistant director. He walked amongst us for a couple of minutes. And if you got a tap on the shoulder, it meant that you were going to be one of the extras working for the next 6 weeks. And I got a tap on the shoulder. And I'm not sure why I got a tap on the shoulder, but I did, and I ended up having a great opportunity. And after a couple of weeks of filming, I was sat at a table not far from where Sylvester Stallone was sat with his bodyguards. And I heard them say, "Has anybody got a story to tell?" And, nobody said anything because I think it was a little bit shy because it's Sylvester Stallone. And I, being the care leaver, thought, I've got a story to tell. So I stood up and said, I've got a story to tell. So, I talked a little bit of my story, and he interrupted me and said, "Let me tell you my story." And Sylvester Stallone told me his story of growing up in foster care. He was on the cusp of going to prison when he lived in America. But he was a boxer, and he was a good boxer, but he always wanted to be a professional boxer, but knew that he would never be the best in the world. So he wrote a story about being the best in the world. And the story became Rocky, the very first Rocky film that came out in the early 70s. And his story was that he'd gone from New York to Los Angeles on the bus, jumped on the bus, didn't have any money to go on the bus across America, and ended up in Los Angeles. And, he went to 4 or 5 picture houses who were all interested in the story. And he said, "I'm only going to sell my story of my experience of growing up as a child in foster care and leaving care, essentially. I'm looking at being a boxer." And his story was about Rocky. He said, "I will only sell my story if I get to be Rocky Balboa." And 4 picture houses turned him down and said, "No, you can't be the person in the story. We will buy the story off you, but you cannot be the main character." And at that point, he said, "I'm not telling you the rest of the story because some of it has got my own personal experiences in it, but some of it is about Rocky. I'm not telling the story." And he left it and left it and left it. And eventually got a film house who came along and said, "We will produce the film and we won't give you any money for the story, but whatever money we do make, you get 25% of the money that we make, and you get to be Rocky Balboa." And at that point, he said, "I will tell my story. I want to tell my story because it's got personal stuff." Now, he did say to me, "Do you know how much money I've made from telling my story?" And he's made over $1 billion in relation to just the Rocky film. So I took that story, I ran home as quickly as I could, ran all the way back to the UK and started to write my book, obviously The Cornflake Kid. And that's why, I wrote it, I self-published, I put my own money into it, and it still sells a bit on Amazon now, and I would advise people to have a look at it. It tells a great story of growing up in adversity, and the end is quite a nice ending to it. So back to my bit, and telling the story is really, really important. Okay, so where are we today? I'm glad to report that most of what I mentioned above about the care system has gone in the UK, and we are in a very exciting time. And I'm not saying that we've got it absolutely perfect, because we haven't, and we've got to work stronger with government, which is my job in government, to work with ministers and with our Prime Minister, and obviously to work with local authorities, charities, and other delivery partners to get this absolutely right. And we've done a few things that I wanted just to mention. We've got some new legislation in place. So we put legislation in place to strengthen that corporate parenting approach. We want local authorities to be mum and dad. So in anything that we do in local authorities and in national government, we will say the test is that a good enough offer for your own children? And if it's not a good enough offer, then why do we do it? So why do we make our young people who are 16 and 17 and 18, why do we make them homeless? Why do we make it very difficult for them to get through the education system? Why do we sanction them if they don't conform to a benefit system that doesn't always meet their needs? So we want people, national and local level, to begin to use that test. You know, if we're not doing it, then we should change it because it has to be better for our children. So that corporate parenting duties that come into place were absolutely crucial. There's a requirement on the state, and again, I heard in a couple of sessions earlier on that co-production, that involving care leavers, you know, making sure that we've got care leavers, children care and care leavers at the very center of any policy or decisions that are being made by them. Because I'm care experienced and I'm in government decisions about talking to young people, about how we offer young people better services. But I also talk to young people. So there's a local authority to the requirement to develop something that's called the local offer. And it's basically a set of rights and entitlements. So every care leaver who wakens up in this country, in the United Kingdom, waking up, and they'll be able to put their hands on their local offer and get to see what the offer is from the local authority to support them during their difficult time leaving care. And then the third bit is that we've extended all support to care leavers up to 25, which is probably sort of the right thing to do, that we shouldn't have cliff edges at 18 or at 21. We have to make sure that we support our care leavers all the way up to 25. And then the final bit, just to say, you know, is that we want to try and work with different sectors, you know, different delivery partners, charities, with the voluntary sector, because an offer from those organizations can also be an offer to care leavers. So we've got something in the UK that we've called the Care Leaver Covenant. It's run by an organization separate from government, although it's managed from a procurement point within government. So they are looking at a range of opportunities from businesses, you know, to try and get employment, to try and get opportunities for apprenticeships or work experience. You know, we're looking at a whole state offer to care leavers. So we've got 12 government departments at the moment working very hard to fine-tune policy and to make sure that in government that we offer the favoured approach to our care leavers, because some of the policies we've written are just slightly adverse to care leavers and their experience. And the final bit before, you know, the final points that I make, you know, I think I like the idea of us developing, you know, a care leaver covenant across, you know, maybe many countries, because there are big companies out there who I think can give a bit more to care leavers. So for example, you know, we could have a conversation with, say, Virgin Media, which is one of the biggest IT companies in the world. Why don't we have a conversation with those about them offering care leavers either a device of some time, so maybe a mobile phone, but more importantly, why don't we offer care leavers free broadband? Because broadband shouldn't be seen as being a luxury in a modern society. And, you know, we're all on Teams today from an international perspective, but I hear care leavers saying to me that they can't afford. It's either you have to buy a broadband package or you can't eat for 2 or 3 days. And that's just something that care leavers shouldn't have to make a choice of. So we're working very hard with big companies like Virgin Media and other companies to get a better offer. So I'm hoping that what I've shared today is that I'm hugely proud of what we've achieved. You know, I think there's many stuff that we can do in the UK and take that to European countries. I don't think we're ahead of the game in some sense. I think we're beginning to level out a little bit from where we think we should have been maybe many years ago. But we still get stories of young people being failed, who are leaving school with very little education. You know, I've got care leavers who are leaving school, you know, who are unable to read and write at the point where they can apply for jobs. So a really, really interesting time for care leavers. And, you know, if there's only one message, and again, that you take from today, and we could ask governments to invest in more money into care leavers, and that may be tough, and we should always push for governments to be a little bit more favorable. But I think in essence, it's about hearts and minds. You know, if we can change people's minds and we can get to people's hearts, and the only way we get to that is by getting care leavers to talk to other care leavers from a peer point of view, but also to get involved with politicians and to get involved with senior officials, because the stories are really powerful. And for the care leavers who will take a message away today, in any meeting that you go into, just ask them, would you do that to your own children? So that's my final point. And I wish you well for the conference. I'll stay on for as much as I can over the next couple of days, but I'm hoping that that's given you a little bit of an insight of what we're trying to do in the UK. Thank you very much.
Late, or we're running 15 minutes late.
Thank you so much, Mark, for motivating us and leading us. Please, if you have a comment or any remarks, just drop them in the chat box. And if you have any questions for Mark, just drop them in the question box. We were supposed to have a break, but because we are 15 minutes late, we are just going to continue. And in this we have, it's full of experts and professionals working on the subject of living care. May I request Professor Mike Stein to take over and to take over this session? Yeah, this is our last session for today. So please, Professor Mark, please. Professor?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Professor, can hear you. We're happy to have you back, please. Can you take on this session?
Sorry, the technology is not working properly this end, but anyway, so this session is, we're going to explore from 6 different contributors, the policy and legal frameworks from different countries. And one of the main focuses will be for the different contributors to identify the care leavers' contribution. The last point that Mark was talking about, how are young people from care involved in policy development. So the order on the program, I think the first person to speak on the program is Yasmin. And each speaker will introduce themselves and talk then for a maximum of 5 minutes. Okay, Yasmin, if you could start, please.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. My name is Yasmin Al-Hagri, and I'm a member at Wataniya Society for the Development of Orphanages. I'm the Deputy Executive Director, and I have passion towards children without parental care, children and youth without parental care since I was at university. I always felt that it's a duty and I owe them a lot. And I believed in them because they inspired me a lot. Wataniya is not an orphanage. We are an NGO registered under the Ministry of Social Solidarity since 2008. Our aim is to unify and standardize the alternative care aspects to ensure equal opportunity, a future of equal opportunity for children and youth without parental care. Dr. Mike, I just want to make sure, do you want me to talk about the legislation framework, or you just want me to introduce myself at this point?
Yeah, just introduce yourself in just very briefly, and then talk about the legislation framework. Just a minute to introduce yourself.
Okay, okay. Regarding the legislation framework in Egypt, when we started in 2008, the latest executive regulation related to institutional homes for children and youth without parental care was issued in 1977. The regulations were only focused on the financial and administrative aspects. Care leavers were only mentioned once in the child law, in the Egyptian child law, which was issued in 1996 and amended in 2008. The article states that the child may remain in institution if he is enrolled in higher education until graduation, provided that circumstances that led to his admission in the social care institution are still standing and the child has successfully passed his educational stage. Our main goal at that time was to develop and mandate national quality standards by the Ministry of Social Solidarity to ensure quality care for children without parental care and ensure their social integration. We were conscious at that time that these standards wouldn't be developed without the participation and the involvement of the care leavers and the youth in care. We had a challenge at that time, which is how to gain their trust. We used to hear them telling us, we've met people like you before, we've heard this before, we know that nothing would happen or would change. So we made it a point to be very transparent about how the process is going to work and how lengthy it could be, to avoid any frustration and any expectations. In 2011, we started a youth development program that aims at raising the youth self-esteem and help them to express themselves. A youth forum was developed from the program as a safe space for youth to express themselves and support each other and give back to the community. Through focus groups and through a roundtable discussion, we managed to incorporate their insights in the standards. The Ministry of Social Solidarity invited a group of the youth to express their recommendation and insight and to listen to them before mandating the quality standards in 2014, which was a great success and a turning point in Egypt in the alternative care sector. In 2019, we started another journey.
Your last minute.
Okay. We launched in 2019 in partnership with the Ministry of Social Solidarity and Roses Foundation, a 5-year program called Care Leavers Independence. One component of this program was to work on the legislation framework because we believe that the standards in itself is not enough. Currently, we are working together with the Ministry of Social Solidarity on reviewing the child law and developing a unified law for alternative care to include in it all kinds of alternative care, including aftercare. Last thing I want to say that maybe right now Wataniya is more confident and more optimistic than before because there are leaders among the care leavers who are able to lead the coming phase. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Very interesting indeed. Joseph McDowell from CREATE. Next.
It looks like they've the host has turned off my video. So
don't worry about it. You're not the first person to happen to.
So I will only be speaking. I'm the executive director at the Create Foundation in Australia. And Create is the peak body, an independent organisation that represents the voices of children and young people in out-of-home care. And since about 2000, oh, the host asked me to start the video. Good. There you go. Since about 2008, we've been writing reports on leaving care in Australia. And I'm very pleased to say that as of December, we will have another one that we have just produced. In Australia, it's an interesting situation because it's a federated system. So we have 8 separate jurisdictions that have joined together to make the nation of Australia. And each of those jurisdictions has its own legislation and policy framework. And that obviously would lead to a little bit of variety and inconsistency. And it's back in 2011, the Rudd government set up the national framework for protecting Australia's children. And within that, they set up a set of national standards for out-of-home care because they realized that there was so much variability that it was going to be difficult to expect that each child in Australia and wherever they lived would have the same rights and could receive the same support. So we've been struggling since then to try to get some consistency. When they set up the national standards, for example, there were 2 things that we advocated for, that they begin planning for leaving care at 15 and that we continue support for young people to 25. The only agreement we could get across the states and territories was that they would or should start planning at 15. We could not get the support to 25. Some went to 19, 21, 24. At that stage, 5 states did say 25, but it wasn't enough to swing the others. So we've got this situation where the states are really there. They set up the rules and regulations. The Commonwealth has very little input. It controls a program called TILA, the Transition to Independent Living Allowance, where they provide $1,500 for the young people leaving care. But that is so complex to access that young people have to have a caseworker who will do all the negotiations and lodge the submissions on their behalf. And if you don't have a caseworker, then you've got big problems. And we found in our research that only about 40% of young people leaving care know about their leaving care plan and have caseworkers who could act on their behalf. So when the government did a review recently and found that there was an underspend on TILA of about, well, they'd allocate 3.5 million and only 1.8 was being used, and they wondered why. Obviously, if we made the system a little simpler, more would be accessed. There are a few things that we're trying at the moment to get through in legislation.
1 minute now.
Good, Mike. The interesting thing is that a lot of these are happening in the UK and overseas. Extending care to 21, having a personal advisor type mentor associated with the young person to help them on their pathway to independence. To have a database that keeps a bit of a record of where they are, what their needs are, what services they're accessing, so that we can plan better in the future and maybe share some information. So all of this isn't happening. We're trying to have it promoted in Australia, but it's very difficult. And I suppose I was a bit inspired by Mark's comment where we need to get to the hearts of people. I think that's the only thing we're going to be able to achieve through an organisation like this, and all coming together to listen to the voices of young people, is to start to tell the stories so that the general public become more aware and exert pressure on the parliamentarians so that we actually have decision makers who are concerned for the reasons that they mostly concerned about getting votes. And that way we can put some pressure on to affect some change.
That's great. Thank you very much. That's lovely. Mark Riley now, please. Are you there, Mark?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, lovely.
Okay, great. All right. Okay. Thank you, everyone. This has really been excellent so far. Well done to everyone involved. I'm going to try and stay within my 5 minutes and be brief. My name is Mark Riley. I'm based in Uganda. I spend most of my time working for Hope and Homes for Children. I've been in Uganda for 11 years nearly, and I've also done a lot of work in Uganda on care reform with the Ugandan government and civil society organizations. The one thing that I realized very early on in my time in Uganda is that when we started to close institutions, and once we started to talk about deinstitutionalization and change in the care systems, those young people who were exiting care, either because they came to 18 or because we were closing institutions which were incredibly damaging for them, we realized that there wasn't support mechanisms for these young people leaving care. So taking our lead from the Kenyan Society of Care Leavers, who I have to give a big shout out to, being in the region in Kenya, we started a small program here in Uganda for care leavers. And I just wanted to briefly touch on some of those things that we've done. Initially, we started it to do some research so that the care leavers could tell us about their experiences of growing up in care. And we can post the links to that research, which has really helped to advocate for their rights and changes to the system. But of course, when we started the network, and it's run by care leavers, Mai is on the call, and Mai actually coordinates that with very, very little input from myself now, which I'm very pleased about. They support each other. They've created WhatsApp groups. They provide some counseling to each other. We also encourage them to actually actively participate in some of their local district systems. So we actively, train them and mentor them to be able to, input into some of the local activities that are taking place in their district with the probation officers, the government social workers, and others, and fully participate in those things. One of the things which I think, a lot of the care leavers are is that a lot of the policy and legal frameworks are already developed in countries like Uganda. And let's just say that they would develop with little or no input, child participation. And actually, care leavers is a great way. Networks of care leavers is a great way to ensure that these young adults are actively participating in the legal and policy care reforms in the countries in which they are living. And when we talk about child participation, we shouldn't just, a lot of us talk about it, but it's not about getting young people to sing and dance and to perform tokenism. It's some real meaty discussions where they share their experiences. I'll give you an example in Uganda where the Care Leavers Network are actively involved at the request of government in helping to rewrite the Children's Act, to rewrite the Alternative Care Framework, which is now being reviewed because it's been in position for about 8 years and is being updated. So they are active participants in that process. The other thing that I would say, and I think this is a really important point. Sure, this is a really important point. We've been working with Ugandan care leavers to develop a life skills program, a mentorship program, something that we can deploy in communities and have mentors in communities of young people. It extends outside of those people who've experienced living in care. The kind of topics that we are addressing and supporting young people with in terms of life skills, they're applicable to a lot of other young people who haven't had care experience. Maybe they've had some disrupted development in their communities and they've lived, in a very disruptive situation. but the life skills is absolutely appropriate for those. So what I would say to Care Leavers Networks is that your experience and your more than just care leavers and those young people experience care. It's actually appropriate to the wider society of children and young adults who've actually, you know, suffered some kind of disruption in their upbringing. So I think care leavers can be an entry point for a lot of this work, but I don't think it just stops at care leavers. I think care leavers can be a great entry point and a route to access a lot of other vulnerable young people that need support in our communities.
Okay.
So there you go.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed. Now we have Tanja from Germany. Are you with us, Tanja?
That's me. That's me. Hello, can you hear me? It's like,
Lovely. We
can
see
you?
you and hear you.
Okay, it's like this whole Zooms thing is like a modern seance. It's like hello, are you with me? Can you hear me? But yeah, I can see myself. I can see myself talking, and the frame is surrounded with a yellow frame, so I think I'm visible and audible. So my name is Tanja. I have been in the first session where I already shared that I joined the conference from a triple perspective as a care leaver myself, as a social worker. So I work with kids in care, and I did a research project with people in care around the topic of the experience of violence of young people in care, which is nothing I want to talk about now, but I did a little video for a pre-event, if that is somewhere. You can watch it later. The project is called Alternative Care Future. What I want to focus on is numbers and language. And we have talked about the magical number of 18, which is also in Germany, the age where the responsibility of young people in care changes from being a child to being a young adult, not really an adult, but an adult nevertheless. And I was in a care leaver project for 3 years. Unfortunately, the funding was cut after 3 years. And in that time, there was in Germany a care leaver conference, and Wolfgang Schröer, who's also present, brought up a few numbers that stuck with me in comparison to this 18, where in the peer comparison, the age where young people move out of their homes in Germany is 25. That's the average age. So young people in care are supposed to move out of care when they're 18. So in addition to all the pressure they already have, they are supposed to be more ready for life than their peers, like seven years earlier. And another number that stuck with me was the number 20, which is when most of young people start an education or a paid education, which is also 2 years older than young people in care. And this is something that we try to bring to policymakers' attention, that 18 is way too young to move out of the care system, and that there is no room for failure. But another number that is not talked about much is the number 16. And 16 is the age where a lot of people, young people in care who are not in foster families, the system is slightly different there, are pushed to move from residential care into independent living, which means for them that there is a discontinuation of the connection and relationships that they have with their carers. and also with their care siblings that they lived with. And so young people in care are kind of moved to the cheaper option because independent living is cheaper than residential care. A person at this care leaver conference that I talked about said, like, a young man in care, that why is it not enough that I say I really love my caretakers, that I can stay with them for a bit longer? Why do I have to move into independent living at the age of 16? And I think that was quite a powerful statement, which brings me to language. And there's going to be a change in legislation. It's like very Germany specific, but the language has a focus on services rather than care. And I think that is really important also, how we talk about the care that young people receive. And I think that focusing on a service makes young people feel like they're more part of a project that is managed than care receivers. Oh, another number I want to talk about is, oh damn, I'm going to wrap it up. 75 is another number I want to talk about, that is young people in care, if they make money at all, they have to give away 75% of their income. They're not allowed to have savings, and if they have savings, like bigger savings, they have to pay their care themselves, which leaves them with nothing at the age of 18, which is pretty unfair. And you can apply for less than the 75%, but yeah, it's an information that has not really trickled down into social services, and we as care leavers should have more platform to spread this information. And I want to close with a quote of Lim Sisay, a care leaver that I admire and who's also an author and poet, who said in his speech, a child of the state, like he sees care leavers as children of the state, that the care system should be so good that people come banging at our doors to have their children put into care. And I think that is a goal for policymakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Very nicely done. Thank you very much. So now we have Mr. Rida Ali, please. Are you there?
Hi, Mr. Mark.
Yeah, good.
Hello, everyone. Okay, we start with my name. My name is Rida Ali, and I work as a youth development and communication specialist at Wataniya Society. First of all, I'm glad to be here with you today as a care leaver, because 6 years ago, I couldn't even tell my friends at school that I was in an orphanage. But finally, I realized that I have nothing to hide or ashamed of at all. So, and the society needs to accept me as I am. Now, since we talk about legislation that support care leavers, talk about tertiary education for a good job. You need to must have a good degree from university. So I make sure that I finish my degree. During this stage, I had to leave my orphanage with another young people from same orphanage, without any kind of preparation for to take care of myself or know a lot of stuff about about life and these financial matters. I need to take care about it. So fortunately, my orphanage provide housing for rent, and they provide my apartment for rent for the 6 first months only. So I need to take care about 8 after it, and basic needs and food and financial matters. So I need to looking for work. I need and to provide my needs while studying. So that make a lot of pressure, psychological pressure on me, and affected on my grades. And there's another of my brothers. They can't complete their degree, and unfortunately, they did not complete their degree and just try to provide their basic needs. Legislation in Egypt stated that government should provide a financial support for caregivers, for care without parental children without parental care. So they need. So I suggest to include the caregivers for this and link it with the inflation. Also, I believe the preparation programs need to start it from early age for aftercare and continue for these caregivers until they reach the civil independence phase. Finally, I want to conclude with my health insurance challenges, and this. The issue is we don't have the luxury to be as sick, because we know we can't afford the medical care cost, and we know there is no one to take care of us. And specifically, this in this premises COVID-19, we have a lot of fear and from. So we need to make sure that legislation need to provide this for every caregivers. So thank you, Mark.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing those experiences with us. Our final contribution is from Ian Anand. Ian, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, we can.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, it's very nice to see everyone. I'm just going to take a couple moments to talk about what the actual policy of aftercare is within South Asia. So in Afghanistan, Maldives, Nepal, and Pakistan, we don't have any major policy about aftercare. In Bhutan and Bangladesh, there are children's acts. And in Sri Lanka, we've got drafts. But unfortunately, what really sits heavily on my heart is that we don't have policies for care leavers, for aftercare, for aging out, whatever you want to call it, throughout South Asia in mass. In India, we've got aftercare mentioned in the Juvenile Justice Act, as well as the Integrated Child Protection Scheme and the model juvenile justice rules. But when it comes to actual guidelines surrounding aftercare itself, there's a draft that's been sitting with the government since 2018, but hasn't yet been published. So to give you a framework, this is just brand new. Mark talked a lot about how things had emerged in Uganda and different places throughout Africa, but in Southeast Asia, this is South Asia, this is brand new when it comes to any type of formalized policy for care leavers. So I'm just going to take one moment to speak directly to care leavers in South Asia. I believe that for you to organize and move forward together as networks, and there are beautiful networks coming up throughout South Asia, Udayan Care, everyone and their partners are working together brilliantly to bring young people together so that young people can then take the baton and move forward. You need to know policies throughout the world. So in all of my time advocating for policy in India, the thing that made me the most strong was knowing what policies existed throughout the world and learning from those policies what things I could take and adapt to India and what things I needed to learn and build up myself. So I wanted to encourage all policymakers, all young people who think that they can't influence change. You absolutely can. And that we need in South Asia a significant amount of policy change or just new policies, period, in the coming years. And there are a lot of people that can help you on this call and throughout this entire movement to be able to make a lasting difference. So thank you, Mike.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm meant to make one or two points now arising, and I'll be quick. I think really to reiterate the last point that was made has come out, I think, of all the presentations, and this is very hopeful indeed, is the importance of involving young people from care who've experienced care in different ways. We know that from the contributors, people are at different stages. CREATE, as Joseph said, is a very established network now and organization that brings young people together. We heard from Yasmin how they're being involved in developments in Egypt, from Mark, the networks, parts of Africa, and the Hope within South Asia. This is an interesting and very important point because in the early stages, I think Mark Riddell made this point, in the early stages of development, it tended to be very professionally led by officials, civil servants, perhaps influenced to some extent by researchers. But now care leavers themselves are a critical part of that agenda. And it's a very, very important point because faced with pressure from care leavers, it's far more demanding and far more pressure on government and civil servants to respond to. They have to respond. They have to respond. So again, the last point is a very good one. But from the different contributors, all 6 contributors, it's clear, and Tanya's experience as a care leaver. So just two main points. One is, in terms of legal and policy frameworks, countries are at different stages. There are different challenges depending on cultural context, and there's a lot to be done in terms of the extent of the legislation, whether it's permissive or a duty, and the coverage of the legislation in terms of age of leaving and the support. And I think that Tanya made the important point that generally care leavers want legislation that reflects the same ages that young people living at home want to move on into adulthood. And that's a very, very important that the legal framework for care leavers reflects that. The second point, which I keep coming back to, but is again critical, that the more we can involve care leavers in the processes of responding those challenges and bringing about change, the better. Okay, I think I don't know whether there are any points from anybody that's listening for a couple of minutes. I think we've got 5 minutes, I think, left.
Thank you, Professor, and all the wonderful speakers on the panel. So it's been a day, full of wisdom and so many good ideas being shared. and good to know that so much is happening globally. And over the past few hours, we found that I will just probably highlight some points here. So we can see that COVID-19 magnifying glass for the situation of caregivers. COVID-19 is putting even more on the challenges of caregivers that is already exist, and risk become bigger during the pandemic, which is COVID-19. And problem of isolation and being alone in quarantine, it's very, very important that young caregivers connect with each other and their network. It is very, very important for their mental health as well. Also, schools being closed, it is very, very difficult for caregivers and the you can say young adults living in different organizations, residential care, to have their peers and share what is happening in their life and otherwise as well. Peer support is very, very important using social media platforms. Financial safety is also very, very important. Therapists are important agents in transition and in crisis. Talking about what needs to be done better, sensitize and engage the government policy makers for the challenges and to support the caregivers. More interactions with young people, recognize 18 is the new 25. Everybody has to keep that in mind, especially policy makers and people from child and youth care. Success stories are important to share or tell to other people, also to hear the voices which are unheard and somehow got lost in their journey, helping to reduce young people being scared of transitioning from care, make a room for failure as well. Not only functioning is important, space for experimental development and preparation is also very, very important. Also, talking about other points, support in mental health, financial support, support in housing is very, very important. Also, it is very, very important to ask the policy makers that if they are working for their own children, or probably if their children were in our situation, how would they like to take it forward? And other point is, why are others who don't know my life decide about my life? Access to discuss with policy makers, emphasize aspects caregivers could be proud of. And I'm sure you have a lot to talk or probably share here. Over to you, Mai.
You've been wonderful today. Just to continue with the key messages to take away with us from the organizing committee. They talked about this convention being only the starting point of further fighting for the rights of caregivers. Someone said that the snowball starts rolling, even though there is no snow. From the international committee, commitment to youth with particular focus, participation of caregivers in all process. Nothing should be about us. The generation has the possibility to change something and to have impact of the future. So that means the future is the caregivers. The future is the youth. COVID-19 pushes young people in regarding education, work, increased difficulties in job seeking. So that was from the international commitment to youth, in particular with caregivers. Keynote expert Mr. Mark Riddle, development of caregivers network across the country borders, offering broadband for caregivers, push governments to be more supportive. Caregivers should be involved in political decisions, ask policymakers or other people who would do what would they would do with their own children. do for, or what you do for your own children when they grow up. Yeah, when they grow up, would it be good enough? And then you can continue support the caregivers, or the support caregivers get is good enough. From the panel policy and legal framework on caregiving, the keynotes from them is like, it's importance of caregivers networks. Participation of caregivers doesn't mean only to participate them, like being part of the survey or just say something, but really to listen to their voices. Young people in general live longer with their parents' houses, for example. In Germany, until 25, caregivers often leave care at the age of 18. So Karishma just said that maybe 25 should be the new 18. There is a lot to be done, involve young people in making policies. There's a lot to be done, involve young people in making policies. It's most important. So I think everyone, policy making should have a caregiver on their platform. They should really push to hear the caregivers' voices and what they have to say, because they lived this experience. Karishma, do you have anything else to add on that?
Yeah, I'm sure, Mai, there is a lot to be shared, but since we are running out of time, I would just would like to conclude here. Avril, can we have the poll, please? To check in how, on which continents are represented at the convention now.
Yes, that will be there on the platform for
Yeah, thank you, Avril. So thank you to all the presenters and the moderators for making today a great start to the convention. We hope to see you all tomorrow. We start at the same time. Please join at least 10 minutes before to enable us to start in time. During the rest of the time till we meet again tomorrow, we are happy to let you know that we have the event platform open and accessible throughout. Please visit the booths, the exhibition halls, and the resource center to see some exciting material out there. Thank you so much. Aditya, would you like to add something?
Thank you very much to everybody.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for everyone.
All right, everyone, see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful evening or morning or a good night.